Hey guys, Pete here, and we got a special treat for you today. I do have A.ron from Bald Move, and I have Cris from Popcorn for Dinner. They're going to be joining me to do the normal episode recap and discussion that we do. We're going to do that together, but we also have a very special guest. You'll probably recognize him as soon as I pull him up here, but I wanted to introduce to you guys, and I've just been calling him DHL guy, but we'll find out if there's more to that. Wanted to introduce you guys to Robert Bailey Jr.
Hello. How's it going, guys? Hi.
Hey, thanks for joining us. This is really cool. We we talked a few times, and I was really hoping we'd be able to do this because
Yeah.
one, I've never, talked about a TV show with someone who's been on it. But this is also a pretty unique situation because you don't know that much about it either. So you can kind of come here. And this is one of the things you told me first and foremost was, yeah, we can do an interview or whatever, but I kind of want to come on and talk to you guys as a fan too, with you guys as a fan too, because, you're kind of in the same place we are. So
exactly. Do you want to keep going or?
I guess I guess we'll start with a question that's in that same vein, and then you can just sort of connect it. But yeah, so, obviously this show it makes you think. It touches on a lot of complicated philosophical questions, has your mind turning throughout the time in between episodes. I'm sure that's most of what we're going to talk about later, all of this, all this complexity. So why don't we just start with something fairly simple, while I have you here before I bring the other guests in, and, you can tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got this role. I know even though you're a young guy, obviously, like, you've been in the business, you've been working as an actor for quite some time. And I got to know you as Will on, For All Mankind. And, so yeah, I was just curious to hear, how you ended up in this role, and you can tell my viewers a little bit about your career.
Sure. Well, hi, I'm Robert, you guys. I've actually been acting now for, as of this year, 30 years, believe it or not. I started in the mid 90s. So I was a child actor, and I think I have some of the classic child actor tropes. We're all about the same height and have all these neuroses, and it's a vibe. So I've been doing this for a long time, actually. And as far as how I got this particular role, this was just an audition that came through. I think I go through different phases of my career where I'm either down to like do different types of things, or I'm quite specific in the things that I want to say yes to, primarily because I don't know, I have this weird thing where I have friends that like to audition for everything, but for me, if I don't like really love a thing and I go into the audition and they're interested in me, I feel really bad about being like, actually, I don't really want to do this. So I tend to say no, unless I'm like really interested. So for this thing, I think my team hit me up and they were like, hey, we have a thing. It seems like it's going to be for this Vince Gilligan show. There's not much information about it. We don't know the size of the role. So we just wanted to see if you'd even be interested in doing it. And I was like, you guys, I don't care what I'm doing. It's Vince Gilligan, like I'm going. And so they're like, oh, cool. We just wanted to double check because I love them. I've been with them for a long time, and they're very like respectful of like when I'm just like, I'm not really into it. And so I'm just a big Vince Gilligan fan. Also, some added context for me, because it was like a little free trip to go see friends, is most people don't know this. So from about 2012 to 2017, I did a show on NBC called The Night Shift. It was a medical drama, dramedy, I guess, and I played a doctor on the show. The first episode was my first day on the job, as they do. And so the interesting tidbit to that is that we filmed in Albuquerque for years, and our crew is the same crew as Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. So when we were filming, they were off season. And then when we were wrapping, they would break down our hospital, build up the sets for those shows, and then that team would come in. So I knew everybody involved with all of those shows except for Vince and the production team. But the whole crew, even now, like there's certain people that are in the writer's room or producers, like for instance, Trina Siapi, that is a really good friend of mine. She started off in our prop team for Night Shift and Breaking Bad. And then she ended up being on our stunts, and it ended up playing a character. I think she was on our paramedic team the last couple of seasons. And now she's a co-executive producer on this show. And I think she was also on parts of Better Call Saul. It's a very organic family vibe there. These are people that I spent really formative years with and that I'm still close with, but I hadn't seen in a long time. So for me, when I get an opportunity to be on a project that I know is shooting in Albuquerque, like I go and have a good time seeing everybody. They feed me really well. And we were known on that show for being a very fun cast and crew, where if we had a guest star, we'd like take them out for drinks when they arrived, and like we had a good time. So anyways, this is the first time I'd been back in about 7 years. And while that was really, really wonderful because I knew everyone, it was also, there was a part that was a bit intimidating because, one, I was very excited to be a part of this show as a fan, even not knowing a ton about what it was. And two, they hyped me up before I got there. So as soon as I arrived, the producers, whether it was Jen Carroll or Gordon Smith, who directed the episode, were just like, no, we've heard a ton about you. We heard all these things and like, we're so excited. And I'm just like, oh, wow. Yeah. Hopefully I can actually pull that off. Because, there was no like, gauging, is he able to do this thing? Like they really talked me up before I even got there. It felt good for, one, the people that knew me and knew what I was capable of, responding even on the day to what I was doing and just having to like be behind camera and not laugh too hard. But then the people that weren't as familiar with me, how complimentary they were of me, even like at the end of that day, not to even like get into, which we will, my time with Ray and how that was. She's incredible, by the way, and really wonderful as a person, and such a fan of hers. So, but actually getting to know her briefly, and then I've seen her again recently, was so incredible and amazing. And what a scene partner to have for that scene. But yeah, it felt good to feel like, okay, I think they liked what I did. To then fast forward it coming out, and Trina actually hit me up, randomly one day when I was again snacking, as I do. And she was like, hey, you made the trailer. And I'm like, oh, cool. What? And I watched, I'm like, oh, wow. Like, and so even how I'm here was seeing the breakdown video that you did of the trailer, because I happen to follow you. And it's really an interesting experience being a part of a show after however many years, after all the years that I've been in the industry, that is like in the zeitgeist in this way, where even the trailer is creating this sort of hype and conversation. People are reaching out to me. It's so funny. Again, I'm going to ramble and go on tangents, so excuse me. But on the show, I was talking about Night Shift, which I did for years. That was on NBC. If you're not like a hit network television show, there's certain people in the industry that may not be watching it. And so growing up in the industry, I'm working with a lot of the same casting directors that are bringing me in. And then after that show wraps, I go into one that had known me since I was a kid. And I remember her being like, oh my God, Robert, where have you been? I thought you moved home. And it was like, I was on NBC actually. And so it's funny to then be on a project that you really think is wonderful, but that everybody's kind of watching, whether it's in the industry or out. The sort of response that you get is wild, and I'm really enjoying it. I have to kind of remember that I have things to do in my life, because I'm constantly on Twitter just liking everybody's posts, and it's really fun for me. But yeah, I'm just having a good time. It's nice. I mean,
it's really cool. And I have a feeling that you wouldn't be able to answer most of the questions I would love to ask you here. But like, without spoiling anything, how much did you know about this series going into play this part? Like, what did they tell you? Like, whenever on the day that you came to shoot it?
So that kind of thing varies depending on the project. And I think this project and the event show in general is probably at the top of what's going to be a very hush hush sort of, secretive thing. As I'm talking, don't mind me. I'm going to try to like refocus my camera. There you go. So for this instance, first of all, for the audition, I had what you call dummy sides. So they were sides that had nothing to do with this, completely different characters, completely different dialogue, with a premise that they could then maybe suss out if you could pull off what the actual thing was. So you're not sure at all what's happening. You're just like, this is the scenario, do this. If you can pull this off, we can maybe think you'll be able to do what we want you to do on the day, right? So once you actually
so it's a complete mystery.
A complete mystery. You have no idea. And again, for me, and I think that's why my reps were asking me, I was just like, I don't care. It's Vince. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. And so exactly. And, I didn't know who was still there from the people I knew before, but there was always a possibility that people were already familiar with me involved. So from what I understand and how it typically goes, if I know somebody that's on a production team, they typically, if I audition for something, won't say anything until everybody else is like, we like him. And then they'll be like, okay, cool. Because they don't want to feel like they're pushing you and like influencing, blah, blah, blah. And so I think that's what happened here is Trina was just really excited that like, that was their choice. And so once I got it, I got the actual sides, but I didn't get the script. And so it depends on the project, like if you even can read the full script. So it's really funny because I'm saying certain things or I'm doing certain things where I didn't know at all who Zosha was. And when I went to the premiere and saw it, I was like, oh, cool. That makes sense. But what it really was first of all, Ray was extremely lovely and asked if I'd be open to coming through and like running lines and rehearsing and talking and getting to know each other. So I spent the first part of the day doing that, and which was a wonderful experience. She's the best. And then I talked a lot with first Jen Carroll, the producer, and then a little bit Gordon as well. And they were just like, what questions do you have? And then I just like dove in based on the side. So just based on the scene that you see, it was the first time I was introduced to anything. And I was like, okay, I'm guessing we're talking about a hive mind here. And they were like, yeah. And it's like, okay, blah, blah, blah. And I think the first couple of things that I feel like I can say about the conversation that was had was the only thing I was focused on as a performer was, if we're talking about a hive mind, how much have we seen about these people before that I would need to mirror? Any sort of physical characteristics that I need to like repeat, that sort of thing. Also, with this sort of hive mind, how much of the individual characteristics of the original person remain versus are we all just kind of this like one? So that's the conversation we kind of had, so I could start to figure out what I wanted to do with it. So again, but until you get the signs of the thing, you're not prepping, you're not creating. I created most of the character on the day based on the conversation we had.
Yeah, that was my guess, is that you had to do something like that. And that makes it even crazier, which, we'll be able to talk to the scene later when I bring the other guests in and go through it kind of beat by beat. But that's something that hit me when I'm watching. I was like, I bet he had to figure this out. Like you knew the lines going in, but really nothing else. So you had to improvise this. And so much of it is just about like the way that you look and you take those beats to think and all this different stuff. And I mean, it's just an amazing, you pulled off an amazing job for something like this. And, such a short amount of time and just with not too much to go on. I mean, I think you really nailed it. I think, I told you this personally, I mentioned it in my video. Pretty much everyone I've talked to about it since then has agreed. So, I think that it's pretty universally, regarded as you did a fantastic job. And
thank you.
You touched on a few of the questions I wanted to ask you. So, we'll bring in the other guys here in a second.
Sure.
But I did want to, one of the things that I talked about whenever I made, my first video about Pluribus, when the season came out after I'd seen it, was, the way the characters, even the side characters, are just awesome. We've gotten used to this over the years. I'm spoiled, I would say. And one of the things that I was thinking at that time was these characters aren't around long enough to have a name, but they do have a full blown personality. You look at them and you can see that, right? And so my question for you, part of it was, first of all, does this character have a name? Like, how did they refer to that? I've been thinking of him as DHL guy, which is kind of weird because I'm not getting paid to mention DHL in this video.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a bit of an advertisement, but yeah. How did they refer to the character? Did they just call you Robert, or was there something else?
So we did focus on DHL guy at the time, primarily because, and I really want to emphasize the incredible creative team behind the scenes, who a lot of them actually made it into the pilot episode. Even the people that were like making up Zosha are the actual hair and makeup team on the show.
That's a cool detail. I wondered about that.
I think I can't remember if he was the limo driver, but at some point, someone that drove her is Dennis Milliken, who's the head of Transpo. We're always throughout the thing. But anyways, Jennifer Bryan, who is an incredible head of costumes, and really develops a lot of the look of the people. When I came in, they had the DHL costume hanging, and they were telling me about the process of even getting the approval for that. And then we kind of played with how he wore it and how he walked. And I really leaned into a couple of things with that, because we just wanted to make it as absurd and silly and goofy as possible, juxtaposed to what has just happened. And so even, again, a lot of the things that they allowed me to play with on the day, because part of the thing was how locked in am I to what has come before that I'm not sure about, or how much can I play? And they were really wonderful about letting me play and figure things out. And then Gordon would be throwing different things at me. So we did it a lot of different ways and played around. But anyways, the thing about it was the specificity of him being a DHL guy in this situation. And we really amplified that with, I'm trying to figure out the best way to say this, with my knowledge of how Vince works with his prior shows. I imagine if we ever dove into any of the other characters, that would be revealed about who these people maybe were, or how much they, maintain their names, or, within the scenario. So that's more so why I would never want to be like, hey, this is a thing, because I think so much of how Vince cooks and how he brings in elements later on in shows, if that's what he ends up doing, are revealing in a way that I think is really, really cool and really gratifying. So that's why I'm like, I really want to leave it as just this random DHL guy. And then if it was ever more revealed, then I think it's really special, because it's a cool treat for people that are curious about more,
Yeah. And I guess at this point, I'm going to bring the other guys in. I'll just give you one, as we're transitioning, I'll give you one other thing. I said that they have personality. This guy doesn't actually have personality. So how did you think about that, of him being more of a lack of person? I mean, because isn't that how, I don't know what your acting process is. I've never done any acting, but I would imagine if I was trying to think about a character, that's the thing I'd be thinking about. Like, who is this guy? And the answer to that question here is just completely turned on its head. Is it not?
In a way, I think honestly, Carolina had to deal with that more, because a lot of how she's taking in things, she really has to hold space and not be as reactive. I think the interesting thing about what they did with this episode and my character as well is that it's for the first time that you see one of these people react in a way where they're conflicted as to how to respond and what their directive actually is. And I think that brought out a bit more, right? I think that brought out a bit more of the personality, because it's not just a smooth process in how they're handling the situation. So it was really just not a matter of like, who is this person, how quirky he was. I think trusting in the fact that I'm dolled up in the way that I am, and I'm talking about the medical things as a DHL guy, did a lot of that work, initially. And then it's really just, what is the situation here? And given my understanding of how I need to handle this person, as they keep testing me, the level of discomfort rising, trying to maintain how I should be versus what I think is the best and what we collectively think is the best. And I'm trying to remember, because I think we played with this a lot, how much we did where I'm really just playing it individually and reacting awkwardly versus how much I'm actually listening in for the feedback of the group, because I can't just handle it, versus if it's just, so I think I was just trying different things. And again, I want to go back to the idea of the freedom that was given, especially early on in the show, to play and figure out things and find things as things are developing. When you have as a performer, when you have a lot of trust in the team, like I know I've done projects in the past, I'm not going to speak on any of them, where it's like, oh, I don't know if they like really know what they're doing, so I'm going to like only do one thing so that I make sure that's what they have to use, because I don't trust them to pick the best things, right? So when you're with a team that you're like, oh, you guys are brilliant, and I know you'll figure it out. When we're playing and I'm acting opposite Ray and we're doing all different kind of things, then you're just giddy because you know they're going to put together something brilliant, and you get to watch it and be surprised, like, oh, that's what they went with. In this case, funnily enough, so much of it was pretty much what I was doing. And then I know the moments where it popped in, where they went with slight different variations that actually changed how it worked. And it worked so well, especially seeing what came before. Like once I watched the pilot, then seeing that certain moments where that's not what I was even like thinking work so well in connection, where I'm like, oh, that's so cool that they did that. So it's a treat for me as a performer to see their brilliance and how they put together what you gave them to work with. And they allowed for that because they were just like, we want to see what you do. And then I think, again, when you're popping in as a performer, where they're not maybe quite sure what you're capable of doing, as you start doing your thing, they're like, oh, okay, well then let's try this. You can see the excitement build of what they think they want to like play with, because you can do all different kind of things. So that's also fun to know that they trust you to go there.
All right. Yeah, that's awesome. We're gonna loop around back. We're gonna come back to that. This is the final scene of the episode. So we'll come back, and these guys can ask you a few things too. Let's start with some intros. I know who everyone is, but my viewers may not, or random people who saw the thumbnail and decided to join us. A.ron, let's start with you. I guess tell us who you are, why you're here, but also we just did a 2-hour podcast on this episode a few days ago. So tell us how you're feeling about the episode now that you've had a couple of days to process it. Like, what else has popped up? I know one thing that's popped up for me was the opening part here it's blue ice, and I didn't even make that Breaking Bad blue ice connection the first time we talked.
There's a lot of ice stuff to talk about, Pete. That's just scratching the ice surface. We need Zamboni to deal with the ice topics that we're talking about today. Hi, I'm A.ron. I'm from Bald Move. Me and my buddy talk about television and movies. We're covering Pluribus right now, gearing up for Fallout. We're doing a retrospective coverage for season 1. Man, I know there's something else I always forget. We
Night
do
of the Seven
Star Trek
Kingdoms
right now. I know we're doing the Starfleet Academy, Star Trek Academy next year. Check us out. It's a pretty good time. And I'm here because Pete said I'm going to be hosting Pluribus conversations throughout the season. Do you want in on that? And I'm like, yeah, it's always a good time. And that was even before I knew that Robert was going to show up here, which is Robert, how wild is it to be the son of an astronaut that goes to Mars and has all kinds of crises and disasters, and then to be that astronaut that goes to Mars and have all these crises and disasters?
That's amazing callback. I to be honest with you, because I think you're referring to when I played Don Cheadle's son in Mission to Mars, and then was on For All Mankind going to Mars. So For All Mankind happened right after I got out of the pandemic. I was in my apartment for a while, and then I was suddenly around people, not only on Mars, but on wires floating through a shuttle. And it was a very bizarre experience. It took us a minute to remember how to interact again and not be awkward, though I'm generally speaking awkward anyway. It was just a different level. Anyways, I remember being on Mars and then being like, oh yeah, my dad went to Mars. It was like a brain break thing. Because honestly, I was telling I was telling Pete that I've been doing this longer than people seem to realize. I've been acting for 30 years. And that was like when I was a kid. I might've been like 8 or something when I did that, maybe 9, 8 or 9. And that was my first trip to Vancouver, which I love. I've been back many times since when I did Mission to Mars. So when people sometimes ask me like, oh, what have you done? I legit can't remember sometimes until I like look it up and I'm like, oh yeah, wow, that was a fun project. But it's like been so long now where it's kind of just it feels like a different life in different sections where you did all these projects and then you're like, oh yeah, wow, that or if I receive a residual check, then I'm like, oh man, I did that project like 27 years ago. My God. And so it took me a minute. I think I was in the middle of that shoot to remember that I'd already done something involved with Mars and astronauts. And it was really fun for me. An inside joke. I'm sure people looked at me weird when I was giggling about it, but
I didn't know that it turned into the whole thing. Cris,
my bad.
It's the torch. No, it's
I will do that.
I was supposed to introduce myself. What was I thinking?
That's okay.
Yeah. I just want to say, Cris, this is your first time coming on. I've had some of your podcasting mates on several times, but you're from Popcorn for Dinner, and this is your first time on. And we did a couple of podcast episodes together that are available on your guys' channel, and I just wanted to tell people for yours and for Bald Moves, you guys should go and subscribe and follow their channels because they are doing a lot of good podcasting that I would recommend. So yeah, introduce yourself to my viewers here, Cris, for your first appearance.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Cris. And like Pete said, I am covering the show on the Popcorn for Dinner podcast. So we're covering Pluribus right now. Their Gen V and Slow Horses coverage just finished up. And like Pete said, he was on our preview podcast and then our episodes 1 and 2 combined podcast episodes. So you can check those out right now. And that's how I met Pete. And he kindly invited me to come on the live streams. And I love this show so much and talking about it. So excited to dive in with you guys. And super excited to meet Robert on this stream. So,
great to meet you as well.
Now that you've had a couple of days, how are you feeling about the episode? What do you? Anything change after you had a bit of time?
I really like the episode. I think I feel happy that the show is focusing in on the aspects I like, which is being a very strong character study through Carol on like grief and alcoholism and what it means to be happy. And I kind of like that they slowed it down a bit. I think Vince Gilligan does really amazing character arcs on the shows. And I think kind of sitting with Carol in her grief after all of the chaos of the first 2 episodes was really nice, I think. And it brought up a lot of other, interesting questions with the hive mind and how they operate, her relationship with Zosha. So I thought it was a good episode.
Yeah, the relationship with Zosha is something that I want to get into in a little bit. Why don't we start at the beginning though? Because one of the things that A.ron and I talked about this on his podcast. One of the things that I never found a way to, when I was writing my script for my video, was the frozen eggs that she mentions. I could never figure out a way to circle back to that where it was relevant to what I was talking about. So I didn't really bring it up. And since I've been thinking about it for a couple of days now, it's just, I was thinking about like what does that say about their relationship? Like, what does that tell us? It's a pretty pointed, like there's obviously this thing out there that, these eggs that the hive will have access to, and they know they exist and they know where to find them because they know everything. Right. So there's that aspect of it. But then I was also just thinking about it as a detail that relates to their relationship, because that's what the flashback is mostly about, And another thing that really started to fall into place for me after thinking about it for a couple of days was just how, like, everyone has mentioned how it's kind of crazy how miserable, Carol presents in this crazy once in a lifetime situation. But there's also the side of Helen, like how well she handles her, and like just how like their relationship works. You know what I mean? Like you don't see, like they obviously made this choice together. We're going to go to this ice hotel, and you get there and your partner is just complaining the whole time, but she's not upset about it. She's like, yeah, but this is perfect for you because you love feeling bad, you know? And so I just thought that seeing how their relationship works, that's another aspect of like how obviously she lost so much, but I mean, she lost that function, you know, someone who got her, accepted her, but then also was kind of good at, you know, getting her out of it without getting her out of it, if that makes sense. So I'll just throw that out there. But yeah, like, what do you think about the eggs? What do you think about the lack of joy and Helen, the way that Helen interacts with her, and what all this stuff means going forward? I guess, Robert, we can start with you and just sort of go around the horn.
Yeah. Okay. I love the choice of showing the relationship and showing that as much as Carol is grieving now, and that's showing up in certain ways, she was always this sort of like glass half empty, curmudgeonly person. Mm-hmm. Reason being is that I think showing how much her being herself and finding her person with Helen, and the choice of wanting to be with someone in spite of the things that people might not find likable about you, is such a beautiful thing. That's a human experience, which then later goes into what I think the tragedy is of finding somebody like a Zosha that has so many of those memories, but doesn't have the agency to choose to deal with or love somebody like a Carol. It's just, it just is. I think it's really hard.
Or like the nuance of like understanding human emotion that way, because
it's just memory,
something
and
you keep
collective thing.
Because I keep thinking about like people keep bringing up in the comments stuff about, can they love? I mean, everybody's the same. How can you love a different individual? You can't really, it's a right. thing, but like, it's just the whole idea of the way Zosha presents compared to the realness of Helen, like the real of like knowing somebody, knowing what's good and bad about them all the way around, and then still being there for them like that. Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah. So with the eggs situation, it just spoke to me about how deep their relationship was, because even as much as Carol doesn't seem to be present with the beautiful things that are in her life, she has somebody that can really ground her sometimes and make her enjoy it. And if they're close enough where someone like Carol would want to have, like, bring someone into the world, that means she's really connected to that piece, even if she's not going to like outwardly admit it. Because I don't think someone like her would want to deal with a kid or a child. We've not seen anything about her life that would like speak to that, except for the fact that she has her person. So I think it really just elevated how much they have that connection, that they're even in that process, because I've not seen anything else about Carol that would tell me, oh, she really wants to be a mother and have kids.
Yeah,
except for
a family.
So I thought it was really beautiful in that way.
A.ron?
I want to read between the lines of this relationship a little bit, and use my vast abilities to get into the reproductive mindset of a middle-aged lesbian couple. And I think it's interesting that they're talking about the freezing eggs, because to me, I associate that of someone is saying, maybe we want to start a family, but we got a bunch of things we want to do first. And then, but we biologically want to keep these younger eggs, and we're going to stash them away. And then we have options. And I put that knowledge together, with the fact that I believe it's established that Carol was intended to write the Wakaro series as a trilogy. And
but there's already 4 books.
We're on book 4 now. And you wonder, and this could go nowhere, but I felt like I got a zinger on Severance on a similar, and I'm going to go with it. I wonder how much of like the grief and the anger and the bitterness and all the stuff that the Carol is feeling is that she might feel like, man, Helen deferred a lot of the things that she wanted to do in life to kind of like help me this thing that I don't even think take seriously. And right at the point where it's like, we've got the 5 books, and maybe you can do the serious book, and maybe it's time to start talking about getting them eggs and putting them in the microwave. This thing happens.
Yeah.
And she's already a depressive alcoholic kind of, but like that, what would that kind of thing do to layer on that? And it also shows, but again, could be wrong about all this, but you can start connecting some of these dots, and Helen just turns out she just seems like a saint.
Yeah, and you think about. Oh, go ahead, Robert.
No, I was just saying, I think that's all there. Even in the pilot, Helen is at that point of urging Carol to actually go for her real life and not hide behind the things she wants, whether it's writing the book she really wants to write, or being more open about who she actually is and not hiding about, some of the influences or even who she is as a person or her life with Helen. I think right before Helen's taken, it's this opportunity or this offer to, hey, you've done enough and you've had success. If you're not happy with it, or if it doesn't feel like you want it to feel, you can do the things that you want to do, and you don't have to hide. People will accept it, even if it's scary. And so that is that conversation that they're having about, do you want to tell them the truth about who you are, is the last real conversation they have before Helen's gone. So I think you're onto something, and in my opinion, as far as part of the grief, the loss of that opportunity to live your truth with the person that you love out in the world, instead of hiding everything about what you actually are, what you care about.
Yeah, I think it's significant that she was hiding her sexuality, at least in terms of what her readers knew. And now she lives in this world where essentially there's no homophobia, but now Helen is gone. And that must be really devastating and heartbreaking to deal with.
And there's no hiding anything either, like I think about that. Like you spent so much energy hiding this thing, and it's so difficult. Like it's a huge weight to carry around with you. And then after this happens, you lose everything. And also nobody can hide anything. Like it's completely, it's sort of like, it doesn't actually do it, but it feels like it trivializes the whole thing of what you had to endure in the past,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think what I got out of the whole first scene is, I think the look on her face, on Carol's face at the end, says everything, where I think for all of her complaining, I feel like she looks sad at the end, like sad that she can't just sit there and enjoy this, sad that she can't feel like Helen and just enjoy the awe and wonder. And that's so devastating to me, and I think shows that she's been unhappy for so long. But I think it's that thing where she just can't help it. Some people are just kind of grumpy, and I don't want to pathologize her as necessarily clinically depressed, but I think she kind of shows some of those signs where you're kind of just grumpy all the time and you can't really help it, but then you feel really guilty afterwards. Like, I don't know why I had to act that way necessarily. So and I think we see that even in the first episode too. I think she kind of just has that pattern. And, the fact that this was 7 years ago is significant. This has been going on for a long time. And when it comes to the eggs, I think it shows that her and Helen were, very serious, like everyone says, and she probably wanted to make Helen happy at one point. But obviously, Carol has been so focused on her career that I just feel like it was something that just got put off every single year. Like, maybe they had a few discussions and it was like, next time. And, suddenly this hits and there's no next time for her. So I think, there's just so much probably guilt and regret for Carol for all the things they put off in life.
Yeah, that's the thing about loss. If you lost someone that was you're really close with, which most people have on some level or not. That's the thing that it always gets me, is like, when you have that, you always have that random thought where you're like, oh, I need to tell so-and-so, or I need to do this thing the next time I see so-and-so. Then you remember that they're actually gone, and you think about all those things that you meant to do, but there's no possibility in it. And it's pretty awful. And here I guess the situation is completely, way, way more intense because of everything else that's going on. And this idea of freezing, freezing and holding and waiting, and there's just a whole laundry list of things that you'll never get to come back to, which was really heavy.
Can I make a note? It's not related to this scene, but something else. So while we're on the topic of Carol's melancholia.
Absolutely.
It appears that Carol doesn't really have any friends or family that we can discern other than Helen. And
yeah,
I'm thinking about that in terms of like also how it did. She's very closeted as a gay woman, which is kind of an interesting for someone, a woman of her age and kind of like social circle in Albuquerque. I've been to Albuquerque. Albuquerque's not exactly an anti-LGBT city. I wonder if and the other thing is my own personal experience. I grew up in a very evangelical, conservative, Christian kind of cult that practices, excommunication and whatnot. And I wonder if there is a religious connection here too, that like she left an environment where she had to hide that part of herself, or that part of herself is the reason she got rejected. Because it's just weird that we've, it's Helen and the pirate lady, because she looks like the pirate dude on the cover. We don't hear brothers, sisters, nephews, mother, father, maybe they're dead, college roommate, friends. Like you'd think the hive mind, we're almost 5 days into this, they'd wield that stuff out if it was there. And I think that's really telling that, there's got to be some story there when a woman gets into late 40s, 50s and she's just severed from the human race, except for the connection she has this one woman.
Yeah, a lot has been said after this episode about how Carol isn't likable. Like I said that in the sense of like, not that I don't like the character, but just that she has a lot of things. She has a lot of red flags in the way that she carries herself. And, obviously this is different in a way because she's mourning and she's drinking and she's taking Xanax that we see pretty liberally in this episode. But I mean, part of this flashback shows us that there was always something going on. But I mean, that's not to say that I don't enjoy the character or I'm not compelled by the character. It's just that that's something they're doing, right? So I think that there has to be a story that we'll get, right? That's something that's going to be revealed. There's a reason, not necessarily that justifies her behavior or her personality or any of those kinds of things, but there's something in her past or in her family life or in her, there's something we don't know about her yet that's going to make this make a little more sense, I think. I mean, would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, I actually think, not to like write fanfic here, but I thought it would be an interesting plot line if she did have a bad relationship with her parents or something, but now they're in the hive mind. And if they were ever to meet again, they would have to be really nice to her. And what would that feel like to have people that you had a bad relationship now do anything for you? So I have no idea if they would ever go that direction or what happened, but that would be interesting.
Put a pin in that, because that's something that I want to come back to in a second, but go on.
Yeah, no, I was going to say on like Better Call Saul, we didn't really get Kim Wexler flashbacks until, I don't know, season 4 or 5. So, it could be maybe a while before we get a Carol flashback, but I think it's nice to know that they always have that in their back pocket. So it might be something that we're theorizing on for a while and then they finally confirm it down the line.
Yeah, we kind of got like a fake flashback at first too, like incomplete one. Like the first time we saw her in the past was with Jimmy in the office, and she was pretty happy-go-lucky at that time. We didn't get the other layer about like her, what she was running from when she got there until much later, like maybe even season 6. I mean, we didn't meet her mother until season 6, I don't think. So yeah, that's interesting. And I kind of hope that they don't take that long to get to it, but like, we'll see,
Yeah. I mean, that was different because they were developing the character after season 1 versus,
Absolutely.
Carol's now our main protagonist.
Right.
Yeah. I got a couple of questions here. We'll touch, but yeah, like you started to touch on something there that I want to come back to. Just say it. Thank you for the 5. Was there anything in the flashback to represent that it was in the Hive's consciousness or Carol reflecting? It's interesting. I don't think there was anything. Obviously, Zosha tells us later that it's in the Hive's consciousness because she finishes the thought for Carol when Carol remembers it. I thought of it as from Carol's perspective, but it's a cold open in the in a Vince Gilligan show, which is it's not necessary. That's just a storytelling technique they use, is to introduce things there and then connect back to them in different ways. So I didn't put that much thought to it. I guess the point for me would be that it is in the Hive's consciousness. We know that because of their conversation later in the episode. So any of you guys have anything you want to add to that?
I think you're on point to me, as far as I don't necessarily perceive it as being specified from the perspective of either Carol or the Hive mind. As far as when we're first seeing it, I think it is a storytelling device to give us that information so that when they later have the conversation, we understand what the Hive is drawing from, and we understand what that means emotionally. So I think it's just showing us the flashback and reference versus them like remembering, and us seeing them remember it. If that makes sense.
I really like the way that they did that, because it she sort of remembers it when she's having this, and she realizes like that those are her memories. Those are that is what she lost, is these things, and we kind of put it together at the same time, which is always fun. As when you're watching a show, is like, oh, that's why they went back 7 years in the beginning, so that we can understand what they're talking about here. Jay Raymond, thank you for the $9.99. Late to this, but the Hive is missing nuance in good and bad. Good equals good regardless of downstream effects. When they lie by omission, it seems it's for altruistic intention. Yeah, I think.
Okay. Go ahead. Sorry. I think why I was interested in answering this is I think this is kind of a big part of what the scene that I did this episode starts to tinker with a bit. And I think I'm not answering as though this is, what the deal is, but I think an interesting thing to consider is, yes, it could be that a lot of what's going on is entirely altruistic, but if you think of the Hive having a relationship with someone like Carol, if their code speaks to survival and spreading, what is the only threat to them? It's the emotional volatility of the person that they're in the relationship with. So a key directive while they have time to bring this person in might be de-escalation, trying to appease as much as possible so that they can't die if she is unhappy. And then when they can bring them in, there's no threat. So even in talking about where we're going to get to later with escalating and the question of weighing the pros and cons of something like an atom bomb, if you're thinking of a hive mind where these pieces are, appendages essentially, and not individual humans. Yes, the cost of life is huge, but we've seen 11 million can die and they can still function just fine. So if what Carol needs to be happy is to blow some stuff up, well, that's not great, but maybe we can quarantine and we'll, we can be really efficient and take care of that, but we'll survive long enough as an organism to then figure out how to bring them in where there is no more threat. So for me, it's actually much more dangerous from the perspective of what they actually need to do anything but try to make her as happy as possible, because we've seen so far the only threat to them is her emotions directed at them in a negative sense.
Yeah, I like that. It's interesting because it implies that maybe this is some kind of adaptive process of the hive mind, is that they placate any non-hive minders, because it made me think, tarantulas or a lot of spiders, the males, when they go to reproduce, they get eaten. and there's like a evolutionary's arms race. Like Tarantula's got these like special hooks on the male guy's got these special hooks on special arms that they can grab the fangs. Like, yeah, not yet, got past these genes. So it's like, it makes sense that if they can be killed by strong negative emotion, there'd be some kind of almost evolutionary drive, like to appease the
Sure,
people connected until they can connect to them.
Yeah, and I think both things can be true. I think there is a super positive, happiness, wanting to make you feel what we feel sort of thing. I'm only really speaking to the idea that I've seen quite a bit that, there's no reason why they would do certain things as far as like the escalation of what they're willing to offer. I do feel like there is incentive as far as even baseline survival. If their biological directive is to spread and propagate like their code, they have to exist. And if the threat to existence is her, unhappiness, I would put that at the priority list, no matter kind of what the consequences that could have.
I'm very curious about the threshold boundaries of that, though. Like, it's like we're talking one nuke, right? And they balked at that, but it's like, okay, she takes a nuke, drives it to New York City or Tokyo, blows it up. We're talking 40, 50 million people dead. Just her getting pissed off on accident killed 11 million of them.
That's what I'm saying.
If
that's actually a bigger risk now that you think about it. Like,
that's losing the tip of your pinky for them, but it's like, what could they lose if she started actively trying to damage them,
to glitch them out?
She's doing because she's kind of a drunken asshole. But
yeah, I feel like a moron, because I never really connected those dots in that, just because I was thinking of the implications of what it was, and just sort of being suspicious of the Hive in general, like not necessarily because of it's warranted in like what their actions are doing, but just because they're a Hive that has assimilated humanity and, have turned it into something different, the invasive species. So yeah, like I hadn't really thought about that part. I hadn't been thinking it from that frame of it's just them trying to keep her happy, not because that's just something that they do, but it's because she can actually kill large amounts of them at any time if she loses her temper.
Yeah, I think
to be clear. Sorry. To be clear, this is not insider information. This is me being a nerd and speculating based on what I've seen. So I just want to be clear.
No, I think that puts a lot of things into focus for me, that them listening to Carol isn't because they have to listen to her. It is just to keep her happy and to placate her. And I think that answers a question that I think I was going to ask later of, why the hive mind and Zosha kind of keep mentioning Helen despite her requests. And I think by your logic, that makes a lot of sense. They can think that will, in the long run, make Carol happier despite her protests. And maybe it is a little more manipulative than I thought, even though it could be manipulative in an altruistic way, right? I think sometimes you always see manipulative as bad, but they could be seeing it as good, and that will help her heal. I don't know, maybe, even though it seems a little ghoulish, as she said at the beginning, but that's interesting.
Yeah, I do think there's an aspect of viewing somebody like a Carol when they mention her drowning as almost childlike, that they have to manage for her best interest, which ultimately in their mind is to bring them in. And so I do think if there is an altruistic sort of manipulation, it's for her best good and their thinking, which I think they've kind of started to imply this episode. So I don't know if it's just like directly manipulative, or they really just believe the best thing for her are these things, and we're going to guide her based on what we know of her emotionally. And, if we have to take a couple of L's because she wants something ridiculous, as long as she doesn't, blow off her top, we're okay. So that's kind of how I'm seeing things so far.
That's cool. That's a good insight. Like I said, I've thought about it in different ways in different situations, but just there's just so many different things to consider with them, because there's so much we don't know about how they act, but how it actually operates. And maybe we never will, but I expect that we're going to learn more as we go. One of the things that one of the biggest things about this episode for me was the violation of her memories, her private moments, them knowing about that, and the way that manifested itself later before the grenade goes off. What hit me after the fact is that not only do they know what Helen, not only do they have Helen's memories, but they also know what Helen thought. Like, that the classic idea of like, you don't really want to know what people think about you. Like even the people you love, like, because if you think about your own brain and the way you think about things, like you cycle through like some dumbass thoughts before you settle on something, right? You know what I mean? Like that's just the way thinking works. And it hit me that like she could go to them and ask them stuff about Helen that she would have never been able to know before Helen joined the Hive. And that's kind of a weird thing. So I don't know if anybody, if you want to add anything about this idea of violating their private thoughts, but then also would you want to know if you could know some, if like what people really thought about stuff?
I think I would get too curious, but I don't think I mean,
that's the thing,
know.
Right? Because you don't want to know, but how can you not find out?
Yeah.
If you had the opportunity, you're going to ask, aren't you?
Yeah. And I think that's how, I know we'll get there, but I think that is how her relationship with Zosha could develop in a way, is if she just gets a little too curious one night and starts to ask, or I don't know, reminisces on memories, especially I was thinking about when you're grieving someone. The worst thing is when you have a memory and you want to ask them about it because you can't quite remember it.
Right.
And that could definitely be something where she needs her/the hive mind to fill in the pieces.
Yeah, it's a slippery
that can be
slope
very
from
frustrating.
That.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else like want to? Would you be able to resist the, like? Because you would be able to say like, hey, what about that one time when I asked her if she thought I looked fat in this tracksuit or whatever, was she telling the truth, or was because there's so many things like that.
I know quite specifically that I would not. Reason being, if it's not apparent with the rambling, I'm deeply neurodivergent, and my mind is like always thinking a million random things before I actually choose to communicate something. I know no matter what might randomly pop into my brain, which I think is probably a similar thing to what's going on with the hive mind, the things I choose to communicate are out of care and love, because I'm filtering those things. It's curated in a way, and it's not true. It's just, this is actually what I want you to experience and connect with me about, versus this random thought. And so there's some times where those things pop up and it's not actually what I think or feel or want. It's just a random thing that I was like, oh no, that's not it. I would never want to have access to a database where there's no context or actual frame of reference for the relationship that we have as to the why you choose to say the thing instead of the other things that might pop into your brain. Because I think there's so much opportunity for miscommunication or misunderstanding, unless Helen's taking over the hive mind. Like, no. This is actually why this is what I was thinking or felt came up. That's not relevant here. And so if we're seeing this hive mind lacking context and understanding, I think that the ways in which you can be devastated by, oh, this is what my partner really thought about me, are so like huge. I would just cherish what that person chose with the context of what we were going through at the time and everything about us, share with me as though that's what they wanted me to know regardless.
There's this phrase I've heard. It goes something like, you can't feel the bliss of being perfectly loved unless you go through the indescribable horror of being perfectly known. So it's like, unless the person loving you knows everything about you and the truth, to this extent that there's a gap between that, how do you know what? Because it's like, if your deep dark demon thoughts are, well, if they really knew the truth, they probably wouldn't love me. So it's like, I think, and I wonder if they're getting with that with the hive mind, because I see people are trying to conceive of what it's all about, and but are they happy just because, like, you know, once you go through the handshake protocol and you check in with all 7 billion people, you're like, oh yeah, we're all just fucked up weirdos. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. I get it. And then everyone, didn't you have to worry about it no more?
Yeah. It's interesting. Like this is all things like, you know, there was a lot that I really enjoyed at first about this episode, but there's a lot of stuff that's starting to, it took a little bit longer to sort of connect together, which is was always a good thing for a TV show that I'm covering. I had another question from Jay Raymond here real quick. Jay Raymond, thank you again for the $4.99. This is for you, Robert. Your recent episode was great, man. Delivery and discomfort during the scene was perfectly delivered and an uncomfortable interaction.
Thank you so much, Jay. I really appreciate that. I think it's kind of a dream for an actor to be presented with a scenario in such a heightened way. And really my biggest job was figuring out, not having seen the show because it didn't exist, what the tone was, and trusting that they would like let me know if I was going too far, rein me back in, or etc. But I think when you're having a scene and you open it up for the first time without context and someone's asking if you would give them an atom bomb, it's really easy in my mind to play around with the different levels of discomfort or how you would navigate that. I think if you just imagine a thing where you love someone so much and that you can't really deny them, and they ask for the worst thing in the world, what would come up for you, because you don't want to make them feel like they're a bad person for asking, but also you want them to know that it's really a bad thing for asking. How do you present that? And I think then adding on top of that, the layer that you're not the only voice in your head. There's a chorus and a choir singing
seven plus,
and how often I think we've seen a lot of times that whomever is the most appropriate voice kind of pops into frame, and yet if there's any sort of discordance, what does that sound like? And I think with my scene, you're kind of seeing the pause for the first time of there's not just an immediate, top answer. There's probably a bit of a debate as to how we deal with the situation, which I just think is interesting. So anyways, thank you so much. I think I say that to say, I think Vince and the entire team is brilliant, and they give so much for an actor to work with and play with that it's like, not, in my opinion, not super difficult to like just have a good time and have there be decent stuff. And I know the casting team is also really brilliant. So they're usually bringing on people that are capable of playing and discovering different things. And then the creatives of this show are brilliant enough to be surprised and discover new things. And when they find something that maybe they didn't even think about, they're like, oh, we're going to go with that. We're going to write to that. You've seen that in all their other shows where characters were supposed to die, and then their main characters going forward. Like, that's how they operate, because it's a discovery. That's a part of the music and the art of it, of this is kind of what I'm starting with. Let's see what happens. And I think that's really wonderful.
I got a chance. I got a chance to ask a question to Peter Gould whenever Better Call Saul was running, and that was what I wanted to know, because that's famously that the idea of Kim, they weren't sure what to do with her at the beginning of the season. They weren't even, the idea of what she became wasn't even in their heads when they started. They just needed a scene partner for Jimmy, and in the first season, and talking about how they were able to do that and make it all feel so organic, it really made me think about it is about the way that they introduced the character with that in mind. Like, we're gonna leave ourselves enough room to create this story. We're not gonna shut off any avenues when we don't know what we're gonna do with her, so we'll leave it as open as possible. And it's really simple, but it just changed the way that I thought about a lot of things in the beginnings of seasons of television in general. And this, it's obviously, you know, very, very relevant here since it's the same creative minds.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's you know, like
is there like a, you know, just as we've heard the behind the scenes stuff, and I just want to talk it over as fans, including Robert here.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any implication to the what seems to be interesting? Because I think that Zosia and DHL guy gave a surprisingly unitary performance as the Unimind, and I was actually surprised to hear that there weren't any particular coachings about like, oh, say it this way or do that. And I'm wondering, is that because the dialogue is so specific that when you read that, you're like, I'm getting this concern, I'm getting this, and they write Zosia the same way. So it's like, it's just the writing is so consistent and so expressive that it kind of leads you in there? Or are we having some kind of emergent behavior where like everyone kind of has the same idea of how
what a hive mind is?
Yeah. Yes and no. I would say, especially with my stuff, I go back to, I think with Zosia, the way in which she's had to interact with Carol is much more denial of what might naturally come up, whereas I was forced throughout the conversation to show more of what might naturally come up in that awkwardness. So it was more an escalation of kind of peeking behind the mask of the process, whereas it's all been kind of a performative thing for Carol, even with the wig and whatnot leading up to it. So it was a slight shift in certain ways. But for me, part of my initial question in prepping on the day for it was, how much do I need to carry over from what is before? And a lot of it was, we're still kind of building that. Let's play with what is there. So I think there is a kind of, within the framework of what is written, an idea that you might initially go to. How you would play that is infinite. And believe me, we did a lot of different ways. So it could be all over the place. What I think you're sensing with both what we were talking about with Better Call Saul and with this is, they are allowing you as a performer to paint a lot of different colors and give them a lot of different tools to then craft the story in the editing room. So things that I probably didn't even realize were going to connect to her, when I watch it back, it's like, oh, that's what she did. Cool. That's what that was, because they're piecing all the puzzle pieces together. They're just getting all these different things. And then when they craft the story, it's like they're creating that streamlined thing. So there may have been, I think what you see on the thing is pretty consistent with what I went in there looking to do. And then I know, again, I was saying earlier, I know the moments where I can tell they popped into a different version of what we were doing and made it work really well. So it's seamless. But I think that, oh no, I lost my train of thought of what I was even saying. But I just think that they're really good at kind of taking what you're offering to then make it seem like that's what was always kind of there, because they have so many different things to play with. Because if they find something that they're surprised about, they may shift that. So they don't want to get locked into, this is how it's going to be per se, except for like the overall framework of the story. Because if you do something that's surprising and then they go back in the edit room and they find something with Zosia that, oh, she did this on this line that's similar, let's do that. And then it's like, that's always what it was. I think that creates, that is allowed because there's a sense of confidence as a creative, that you don't have to go in holding it tight and afraid of what might happen if you veer off course. You're allowing for the story to evolve and the performers to bring something to the table to shift where you're going and find something new. And I think the best creatives do that. They're capable of doing that, rather. So this is an extremely crafted story. Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, if you look at it from the lens of what ultimately came, it's this perfect picture. But there's so much discovery on the way and new things and people that popped up that they didn't have plans for that then became central. That is because part of the creative process is the discovery and the play. And I think people that hold on too tight can miss a lot of magic.
Yeah. They talked about at Paley Fest too, that I thought was interesting. They did talk about the physicality and how there is still uniqueness amongst people in their physicality, because if you had a limp, you would still limp. If you had a lisp, you would still talk that way. And I think, obviously if you have an accent or your mannerisms are all going to be a little bit different. So I think it is interesting to think about I think what's on the inside counts, but just how much like your physicality does affect who you are and how that affects like Carol's perception of different people in the hive mind, because I think it's hard to intellectualize or just absorb the fact that they're all the same person, because if you're interacting with different ones, you're almost going to respond to each person a little differently, right? Like even though she's talking to you, you're not Zosha, and so she's responding to you in a different way. And
exactly,
I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but I just think that aspect is really interesting.
I just want to, like, a lot of people have been wonderful in saying it's interesting how closely we mirror each other, which I find really interesting, because I don't carry myself physically at all the way she does. My walk is different. The tone of my voice is different, if uniformly trying to be pleasant perhaps, but there's so many variations to us because we do have individual things that we're bringing to the table, but also Zosha is specifically crafted to appease to Carol, to appeal to Carol in a specific way. And then I'm there, and my goal is to reassure her and like make sure that she knows she didn't do bad and everything's going to be okay, with the perfect bedside manner. And I'm there and doing the thing. So how we present and why people are chosen, even I forget his name, but the guy in the first episode, because he was the closest guy in the suit. It's curated to communicate a specific thing based on how we present. And so, yes, I am also Zosha, but my goal in that moment is to reassure her, you might be feeling guilt about what you did to Zosha, but actually you saved the day and everything is okay. And so how I present in that way, even the goofy squeaks in the way that I walk, is not to appeal to Zosha as this is the ideal, to Carol rather, as this is the ideal version of who you might find appealing in certain ways, maybe, so there's variation enough, because I think there's goals and why we're presenting specific people for her to interact with at times. And I might have just been the emergency person around, but also how I'm communicating, especially initially, I think serves a purpose that is different than what Zosha's goal is when they're just normally interacting.
That's a great answer. That is so insightful.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is very, that definitely is a good way to not necessarily explain it, but just sort of experience it, right? Like the way for us to think about it as we're watching, because like you said, Davis Taffler, he's Zosha too, but you didn't have that sense because of the context. So context is somewhat important, because as we've all pointed out, Zosha is there for a specific purpose. She's not just an empty hive representative. So we had a question here about the hive. So let's look at that real quick. And then I wanted to talk a little bit more about that, some of the stuff that happens in the episode. MW, thank you. This is part one of two. What if the hive mind's motivation is just the emergent property of everyone's brains being connected without some external other? Maybe the RNA code just unlocked the mind linking upgrade. Meaning, once connected, the hive's collective desire naturally becomes what's happening on the show, instead of some alien virus pushing the hive mind's actions. Thank you all from Sweden.
I think that is how I understand it working. I've seen some people being like, well, how at 7 billion people, you smush them all together, and you got so many religious differences, you got so many moral differences, you got like, how are you going to resolve things about, people's differences of sexuality and religious things. And I was like, the way I think about it is like, I was like, can I think of an example that's not political? Yes. Let's say that in the hive mind, a flat earther gets absorbed. That person has a very different opinion on what's going on in reality, but it's based on people are lying to him. The people in NASA are lying to him. They're suppressing the truth. They're doing all that stuff. Also, they're ignorant of a lot of things. If that person could just instantly connect with the finest astrophysical minds and all of the current people that run NASA, and see that. And even the Russian cosmonauts, like, no, man, they went to the moon. Okay, we would have been screaming and yelling more than anyone if they hadn't gone to the moon. But they went to the moon. Like, it's like so much of that is just stuff in our head. Like, we armor ourselves from having our opinions changed. And if it was like you get that little crack in, well, this is your head's just mind open, and it's like, what are you going to do? You can like I imagine you must be able to intuitively feel the truth of what they're saying and that they're not lying. And they can feel the truth. It's like, well, this guy's believes he's flat Earth and it's big. So I feel like it's like those conversations are happening all the time at a blink of an eye. You know, I don't like gay people. Why don't you like gay people? Well, here's a million gay people you can talk to simultaneously and see what it's really like to be them.
Yeah,
I don't think
this came up a little bit
down. I think it's emergent, like you said.
This came up a little bit last week, and I mean the actual answer is we don't know. We don't know what their directive is, and so it's all just different. It's just all just fodder for thought experiments. But one of the things that came up was one of the viewer questions last week was about the executive. Like, there has to be an executive function essentially to it, even though it's everyone, even though we as us, they're, you know, like the question is more of like, is there someone pulling the strings? Like, whoever created the virus and sent the virus, are they guiding what the virus does? Or is it just, is there an executive function inside of it that makes the decisions? And so all those differences that you're talking about, A.ron, just sort of are secondary. Like, they can exist in the sense that all these different minds have been absorbed, but they can't exist in the decision-making process necessarily. And one of the things Jim said, you know, your co-host from Ball and Move, he was talking about how he sees all the individuals sort of as appendages. Like, the brain is shared, but then there's all these different appendages of, you know, like it's like a person with 8 billion arms or something like that. You can use different ones for different situations, but they never drive, you know, they never drive the thinking. They're just tools that can be used and called upon when necessary. So those are all things to think about, MW. And thank you for the question. One thing, this is something that I don't think you can give us any actual insights on, Robert, but this is something that I was thinking of, especially I touched on it a little bit when we were talking, but this is coming from Popcorn for Dinner as well. He asks, do they shower and change clothes?
Right.
Zosha seems to be the only one that's changed her clothes. And I this is something like the TJIF thing was obviously a bit, it was hilarious, but this is days later now. This is 3 to 4 days after the big event, and you're still wearing your clothes like you,
which are pretty fresh, I might add.
And they're definitely not like, you're not disheveled like you've just been wearing them around the clock and not cleaned up, you know? So yeah, it's an interesting choice, I think.
I agree, and I'm curious to see how that evolves, considering I think it's been 3 or 4 days in the show. I kind of point specifically to Zosha, specifically that when we first find her and the task she's doing, she's filthy and disheveled, and when she travels, she remains that way until she gets there in order to specifically spruce herself up for Carol. So I don't know that there is a need or a particular desire to like clean per se, but if your task hasn't necessarily made you filthy yet, you might be fine. I don't know if there's like laundry services and they're just putting the same thing in because it's not a fashion thing, but I just, from the Zosha thing so far, the people out there that were doing the tasks of moving the bodies in that environment just had filth on them, and she didn't change to travel. She just stayed like that until she was right about to meet Carol. So there's a sense to me that there's going to be a lot of disheveled, dirty people that don't really care until they need to present a certain way, maybe for one of the few that are left, functionally speaking, and that we've seen mostly people in suburbs only a few days after this happened, where maybe they haven't had much of an opportunity to really get filthy so far. I don't know. So as it evolves, I'm curious to see how that plays.
I was thinking about that too, about the functionality, because I felt like, and you, A.ron and Cris, you can tell me what you guys think about this too. I thought that she was dressed up for Diabate whenever she was going to go to Las Vegas with him. Like the outfit she's wearing. When she came back, she didn't switch. But like when you see her around Carol, she dresses a certain way that's just a lot more sensible. And I mean, of course, she's attractive and she's trying to be attractive at the same time. But like, it seemed like there was she had two different kinds of looks. But when she came back on the plane, like when we see her at the beginning of the episode, she didn't change and get into her Carol look. She just sort of waited until, so I don't know if that's just sort of another thing I was thinking about too.
And a couple of people have mentioned in the chat, which I forgot because I was thinking this as well, is that if we're also talking about just a function of keeping these things healthy to perform tasks as a health issue and a bacteria issue, that is also a thing of, do you need to just clean every once in a while functionally clean off to not just have, disease that wipes out things. So I think that's an important aspect of it. Yeah.
I think that's the only reason they went around and cleaned the bodies out. Cause like, you can't, people are like, well, why do they care if their bodies, just because it's like a health hazard, man. It's so wild. It's like, it's not that Zozo was just filthy. She had been cleaning up dead bodies. Like that's, you think you would at least wash your hands before you got onto the plane, but I don't. The thing is, like, I never know because, like, Vince and the whole Villa gang is a smart crew, but they're also human. They don't know everything, and I wonder if like they're even aware of the implications. Like, oh, we just showed this woman handling corpses and then getting in a trans-ocean flight, and the only reason we watched her is because we wanted her to look like a pirate lady to appeal to. It's like. Maybe they didn't think it's that deep. It was just like, it's a cool shot.
Yeah. Like you said, their imperative is still survival, and they have human bodies. They're not superhuman just because they're in the hive mind. So yeah, I was thinking that too about disease.
Most of them. So that means they care about the bodies getting rest and being able to sleep. They're not like working them 20 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think with Zosha too, I don't know if she was mirroring Carol, but I think the last episode, she was more in like a blazer, jeans, and I feel like that's more of a Carol outfit than the kind of long Vegas-y dress, let's say. So I think she is just kind of dressing a certain way to appeal to Carol. That's like, I don't know, girlish, but a little more casual, I guess.
I thought that the outfit she wears when she comes to her house with the grenade is really, that's where it really stood out to me, because we didn't know her in the first one. I mean, she's wearing a sweater and like a pair of jeans the first scene, like that. There's really no context there, but when she came showing up with this blazer outfit on, like that's where I thought, oh, okay, this is specifically for Carol, whereas the longer kind of flowing dress that was brighter colors was specifically for Diabate.
I need to go back. I need to think about what Helen was wearing in the first episode. Like, wasn't she just wearing jeans and like a casual jacket? Because then that is semi-similar, but I can't picture it in my head right now.
Yeah, I think she did have. I think she had like it was a shorter blazer, like it was like a coat, but it was it wasn't for the weather. It was whatever. Because I'm trying to think. In the bookstore, she was wearing sort of like a suit, and then when they're in the airport, it was more casual, but I can't remember exactly.
Yeah. I think it's interesting specifically that the hive mind is not trying to recreate aesthetically, at least, Helen. They're trying to merge the idea and the memories of Helen with what they perceive as Carol's fantasy. And so there are going to be mirrors and parallels, but also maybe Helen dressed like this, but we know maybe you secretly fantasized that she was wearing this. And maybe you put that in the book, and we know that's really why you wrote that. And so I think it's interesting, the variations between the reality of who she loved versus what the hive mind seems to think based on their knowledge from Helen that she would really find appealing,
Yeah, so that's sort of what I wanted to talk about next anyways, was this I do have a question to hit first, but this this idea, because obviously the more we get to know and see these two together, the more it's starting to seem like there's real chemistry for one thing, and there's real possibilities of that going somewhere. So real quick, Jay Raymond, thanks again for the $4.99. If you need any medical questions answered, I work in EMS and hospital-based medicine. Raccoon eyes are a sign of a basilar skull fracture. Yeah, thank you, Jay. I appreciate that. And that was something that I found out when I looked that up when I was doing my episode 1 breakdown, was that was a telltale sign that she probably fractured her skull.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did want to talk about this idea of Zosha versus Helen, for as far as like where her thoughts are and where her, like, I mean, for one thing, she's just alone. So obviously when she goes to the plane and stops Air Force One at the end, there's a lot going on there. But part of it is that it's, even if you're not into the, like what they're doing, having someone around sometimes is just kind of necessary to being alive. We can't, not everyone can live like the Unabomber, and look how that turned out anyways. You know what I'm saying? So like, yeah, but I just, the chemistry is interesting to me because it is manufactured, like we keep talking about. So is it real? If it's matter, does it matter? And kind of how can it not matter when the other option is to just be alone all the time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I do think one thing.
Where do you think they're heading with this? I guess is the thing. You can start, Cris. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's heading somewhere. Honestly, just at the end of episode 2, I mean, stopping someone at the airport, like I said, is the first rom-com trope. Like, I mean, I feel like you wouldn't write the scene that way if you're not trying to have that idea in your heads a bit. But I was going to say, I think it's very smart of the writers to make her physicality so important. Just what she looks like is a secret that she and Helen had. And so that just makes her important, even though she is like the rest of the hive mind. Like, her physicality is important. So I think that was smart of them. But I think something that I've been touching on that like Ray Seahorn has talked about in a couple of interviews recently is what it means to be loved uniquely versus what it means to be loved because everyone loves you. And I think she might start to feel things for Zosha down the line because like you were saying, Pete, I think it's just human nature. I think she's still a human woman in front of her, even if she's part of this hive mind. And she does have Helen's memories, so she kind of maybe knows what to say in certain moments, and Carol could start to get attached to that. But then I think it could have some heartbreak down the line, right? Because you get so attached to this person, and then you have to feel, and then you ask that question, is this real? Is this real? And because she only has to love me because everyone else loves me. And so there's never going to be that specialness that there was with Helen, right? It's not unique to her. Anyone would love her if she showed if she showed them love back. So
yeah, this goes back to the AI comparison that a lot of people make, because I've never used it all that much, but one of the things that was kind of annoying to me whenever I had tried to use it is the way that it tells you you're so smart all the time. You know what I mean? Like, you're like, how do you even know that you're not human and whatever. Right. So like you have to, the thing that's weird about that though, is it works. The reason it says those things is because it works. As people, like, we are susceptible to people telling us that we're good and smart and that we're fun to be around or whatever. So even when it's fake, it still works, I guess is the point. Right. And yeah. So did you have anything you wanted to add about that, A.ron, about the situation?
The situation with Zosha?
Yeah, like the chemistry and the way that is being set up.
I am dead serious. I think the entirety of season 1 is laid out in the excerpt of The Winds of Wakero that they released this week.
Well, that's one of the questions that I wanted to ask, because I got to see a little bit of it, but I didn't get to break down the whole thing yet. So
Do you want me to give like a 60-second synopsis?
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if anybody's worried about spoilers because they want to read it themselves, this is your fair warning. We're gonna spoil it a little bit.
And it's I think intentionally written in like this very cheesy, terrible kind of romance way that would make Carol want to kill herself when she reads it, I'm sure. But it's about Lucasius, you know, she's a pirate, and I guess at the climax of the last book, Rabban, put her in a position where, because he's cheeky and he's always like right on the borderline of like insubordination and not listening to commands because he's haughty and all
proud
that.
haughty Rabban.
So she's stuck in some kind of captain's conundrum that he's done something so crazy that she has to like hold him accountable, and the sentence for this particular infraction is death. So she makes him walk the plank. So this whole book, you know, where this is like the chapter 16, I think, she has been, you know, essentially a miserable person because she's killed the love of her life because of her pride and the images she's trying to introduce and all that kind of stuff. And she's also inflicted with this, everyone she knows, her entire crew has been inflicted with this disease that makes them cocoon up in bed. And when they go out and they're exposed to the twin moons, it burns their skin. And they're trying to get to this island where there's this famous healer that can heal them. And she gets this island and she fights her way to the center. She finds the healer guy, and this healer woman gives her a vial off her necklace and takes all her pain away. Says, "That's all I can do for you because I've got a patient that got here before you." And that patient turns out to be Rabban. So Lucasia is like, "Oh my God, it's Rabban," and I'm like conflicted because like I had to
proud haughty Rabban.
Proud haughty Rabban, but now he's back here, and the kicker, and when then the chapter ends with Rabban saying, you know, because he recognized, he's like, I had a jacket exactly like that, because that's the one she's wrapping herself around on the court.
Oh yeah, that's the part that she reads in the in-person reading, right? About that, him wrapping the book around her for the first time.
Yeah, that must
being the first person to do that.
Yeah, it seems like a very chapter 1 thing for her to think back about her last moments with him. But yeah, she turns around, she recognizes his name, recognizes his face, and she's like, Rabban, could it be you? And he's like, "I'm sorry, my lady, you must have me mistaken for someone else."
Oh.
Now, take 30 seconds and think about Helen, and think about Zoja, and think about losing someone you love and wanting to get them back, and then going through some kind of process that might change that person in a way that you think might be the way that needs to go, but it doesn't quite, and you lose everything. You lose everything at the end. And I got a couple of Mad Lib results for that, and I think, but that's my best guess, is that this is all going to be a meditation of love and grief and loss, and she's going to, you know, they're already flirting with stuff like Zoja drinking, and she's like, "Oh, it doesn't work that way." She took a hit in the head, concussion. There's a lot of neurological things that they're doing every episode that I think is going to bust Zoja from the hive mind. And what Carol's going to find out is Zoja is going to lose all of the memory she has of Carol, because she just got kicked.
Well, that would happen,
mind.
yeah.
And she would lose all access to the memories she had of Helen as well. And I think those are the things that's the things going to deepen their relationship. And that's what I think this is going at the end of the season.
So you think that she's not going to be, she's going to release her from the hive, but then that's going to have the negative side effects of
she'll be even more alone. Yeah, yeah. And like, can you repeat that? Or are you going to go around giving, like, that's like, can you give everyone in the world concussions? Is that like a viable thing? Just run around and smack people with the Louisville and you know, get 1 out of 5 of these people to come out of it. You know, I don't know, but
we don't know what Zosha is like either. I mean, she might not even speak English. We don't know her sexuality. She might absolutely just not vibe with Carol in any way.
Tangier, I guess, or
she's a woman from the Levant. So like, are the odds that she is a closeted lesbian in that society? Is that like, because that's a great, like, what if Zoja is not the, you know, amorphous humanity that's kind of like cool with everybody, and she turns out to be really repulsed by the idea of loving a woman. And that's kind of sick shit that Vince Gilligan does on the regular, you know. There's such a nice guy. He's got some darkness in him.
And Carol might struggle with whether to even do it. Like maybe they get to a point where she is attached to her and then she does figure out how to release people from the hive mind. And then that's like a heartbreaking decision, right? Of like, oh, I'm going to lose this person if I do this, but it's the right thing to do. I don't know. We'll see. It might not be that easy to get people out of the hive mind, but we'll see where this goes.
I think that's an added layer. If it does go that way, where she has to choose between releasing someone or losing the connection she's found, the point of this idea that she's the most miserable person in the world that happened to find the one person that loved her in spite of her being herself. If that person's gone and you then eliminate the hive mind, then there is no one else in the world, and also that person is really erased. And so that is the finality of the grieving process that she's not really been allowed, is that the thing she needs to do to save the world and bring back humanity really puts Helen in the grave and severs any sort of connection she has to anyone that loves her. So I think that's an interesting way, if that's where it goes, that choice really of saving a world that seemingly doesn't want to be saved versus, betraying the truth of the love that you had because you just can't bear to be alone, is interesting and very human.
Yeah, eliminating Helen or eliminating the hive mind is eliminating Helen. So that's oof.
It's like even if you don't want to hear, even if you don't want to hear them speak about the memories, they're there at least. You know that they exist. They're not just gone. And so you're remembering them. But when you're gone, they're still there. So to have them be there, but like not wanting them to speak on it is very different than I'm erasing my person by doing this. So that would be a harsh thing if it came to that.
Especially if it's something that, like, because this is like Carol's initial reaction. You guys are ghoulish memory fuckers, and I don't want any part of it. Forget. And I don't know if they can, but it'd be interesting if in a way to placate Carol, they like devise a way that, we actually can all forget Helen. And they implement that at around the time that Carol comes to a grieving process where it might actually be nice to talk to people about Helen and what she thought and all that kind of stuff. And now it's too late because her first impulse of someone who's in pain and who is just going through the grieving process is, this hurts. I don't want to hear any more of it. But man, making a permanent decision, having a permanent consequence to a decision is very much of the moment. It would be brutal.
Yeah. I just saw someone in the comments was saying that we need a DHL guy spinoff show.
Better call DHL. I saw that.
Right. Well, what's funny about
there was a
is,
prequel to Breaking Bad, so
Right. No, what's funny about it is, and I think that this sort of show is very different than the previous shows that he's done, even though he's a X-Files alum, but
yeah.
Literally Ray doing this show would be the equivalent of that, even though she wasn't just like popping in for, but she showed up in Better Call Saul without a game plan. He saw her work and was like, this idea that I have, instead of making it a guy, she can carry this. So it's very funny that idea conceptually. I think that's the sort of thing that Vince enjoys doing by, again, just allowing things to surprise him and being like, I can maybe have an idea and I see that this person can do this sort of thing. So again, it's very just cool in general to be on the radar of people and have them really appreciate your work. And he's spoken very highly of my performance on it. And I just am geeking out because I'm
that's crazy.
You're the best,
that's really cool.
So that would be very cool. But more so for me, I conceptualize it as a lot of the directors or creatives that I appreciate sort of have a troupe of people that when they find them, they like working with them again. So in whatever capacity, I now feel like I may pop up in a Vince Gilligan universe, and that is very cool for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I just want to take a second. MJ323, your comments went up here for a minute. Thank you for the 10. They shared another quote from letter from the editor from the book. How hellish would the world be if we all thought exactly the same? Yeah, that she's finding out currently, the author.
Mm-hmm.
That was the other thing I left out of my 60-second pitch, is that the forward of the author, Carol's talking to her Wykarian fans, and she says, "Look, you're not supposed to read this book, but y'all are gripped up about what happened to Raban, and if you got to eat your chocolate sundae before you eat your meat and veggies, then
oh yeah,
true Wykarian."
I did see that much of it. I saw the part.
And I feel like that's a little kind of coy, is that, yes, this is actually going to be spoilers metaphorically for the whole the season too. It's talking in universe to her fans, but out of universe as the kind of obsessive mega fans that would have signed up for the text message, that would get the book, that would download it, and I don't even have an Apple product, and I'm figuring out how to get it off of iMager and all this stuff, and it's like, yeah, we're doing it to ourselves.
I love how passive aggressive the forward is. She's like, none of you asked me about my Greek mythology metaphors, but you're all gonna ask about why Raban is not on the cover.
Right. Sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah. It also did say that Blood Song is a treatise on heartbreak and grief, and I was like, that seems like what Pluribus is about. So
yeah, that's pretty on the nose, I think. Michael Sanger, thank you for the 5. What other biological imperatives does the hive have? Maybe procreation, i.e. sending another signal. They have been saving power, just saying. Yeah, A.ron and I talked about this extensively on the Bald Move podcast this week. And just the idea of the hierarchy of need, because like we have imperatives, we have needs. They alternate in how important they are at any given time. And they sort of fall in place in a hierarchy that is, it's dynamic. So far, what we know about the hive, it makes it seem like theirs is rather static, in that this idea of spreading is the be all and is end all. But I'm sure that there's more going on. We just don't know yet. But yeah, that's an interesting comment. So thank you for the 5. Let's see what. We're getting into the back half of the second hour, so maybe we'll need to try to hit a couple of things instead of the rest of the notes, I guess. I guess, like, as far as there's not much we need to add, I don't think, about the synchrony at putting sprouts back together. That kind of speaks for itself. Yeah, it was just a great bit of filmmaking. I mean, that's another thing. It's a beautiful episode. This was Gordon Smith's. He was the first person to write and direct. Vince Gilligan did the first 2 episodes. I like that he made it. There was several flourishes here where it was like, yeah, this is a Vince Gilligan show, but this is obviously somebody else operating in his world, which is cool, because I think a lot of times whenever you have weekly directors come in, their imperative is to stay within the visual rules that have been laid out. But whenever you have your co-writer and co-executive producer that's been with you for multiple seasons of other shows, then they have this ability, they have this chance to be able to kind of break out of the mold a little bit and make it their own, which is really interesting. And I think that's going to be cool going down as the show developed. I was just wondering, we could do it. We could do a quick around the horn of like, what were your favorite shots? I said in my video, I kind of like the reflection in the serving lid, and it was not because it was my favorite shot, but it was because it was that moment where I was like, oh yeah, this is somebody else directing inside, like the things that I just said. Like, that's where that really became apparent to me. And then I started looking at things a lot closer and look for differences after that. But yeah, we'll just go around it. Did you have a favorite shot, Robert?
Yeah, I have 2, obviously, because I'll always love Betty White, and that show is my jam, as is the theme song. Seeing the reflection of her talking in the DVD, was sick. There, hey, look at that. That was magic. So that I love that. Also, my other favorite one, and one of my film mentors is gonna kill me because I'm blanking on the exact name, but the split diopter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank goodness I kind of got that. I recently did produced and was in a little indie where we were playing with that and using that. And so just like the Leo meme, when I saw that, I was like, oh, that's the thingy. And I really love. There we are. Look at that. So that's kind of like a lens where there's two different sorts of lenses within it that are shooting at different ranges to capture both things in focus and bring them into the shot. And it's a very, in my mind, film nerd sort of thing where like, oh, that's it's so cool to me. But I love the sort of foreshadowing and the way that they approached it, because it's just boom right there, it's between them, and then each time you see both of them, they're using this sort of lens to bring it right there, but it's in the foreground. It just seems like it's so dominant in their whole view, while we're trying to focus on them and their conversation. It's kind of hard to ignore this gigantic little thing right there.
It's really cool because it's not that glaringly apparent until you go back and look at it.
Right. Exactly.
It's not there it's like what I like about the way this one works is that it's fancy. It's like you said, it's a film nerd shot. Like I was introduced to it from Mr. Robot. They do a lot. They often split it right in the middle though. This one feels like it's a little bit different because
Steven Soderbergh.
In Mr. Robot, it seemed like it would just be two people, in the just sort of like vertically split. And this is, I don't know what they're doing different here, but
I think it's specifically the way that you structure it as a storytelling element. In that case, it would be specifically the split personality divided into these different versions, whereas this is just, we're trying to have this conversation, but this is looming, but like in the foreground.
It's hanging over everything.
Exactly.
Right,
so it's not exactly as parallel and taking up the same sort of space. It's supposed to kind of like bug you a little bit and be in the corner of your eye as you're trying to focus on who you're looking at and their conversation. It's just like, why is this little thing in my eye? What is that? But you're not really, the first time, like you were saying, looking directly at it. There's just something quite kind of peculiar about the lens that you're not really sure why. And then when you go back, you're like, oh, that was just like right there the entire time. What
sticks out like a sore thumb when you know what you're looking for.
Right. Yeah.
Cris, did you have a favorite shot?
Yes, I like the shot where Carol is looking out the window at Helen's grave, and there's a window pane separating them. And as one of them comes into focus, the other one goes out of focus.
Yeah,
and
that's
I
really
thought that was a
nice.
really great way to show how they're, kind of disappearing from each other, and they're literally split from one another now. So
yeah, that is lovely. How about you, A.ron?
No one stole my thunder, I guess. I like the reflection of Carol in the serving bell tray, like looking like a Stargate, like making contact with the alien from the abyss. It's like she's in the abyss. She's like the Navy SEAL that slammed the door shut on the pseudopod that just felt. Yeah, she doesn't want to make contact with it, but that's great. It's like looking at the Millennial Bean in Chicago.
Man, that breakfast looked amazing.
It did. It did.
Just trash can it for lean cuisine.
Yeah. You could literally have like every single member of the hive would be able to produce you, Michelin restaurant meals at any time. Just be able to whip whatever up with whatever ingredients you had. I mean, I kind of understand, like in the beginning, being afraid of like something's gonna be inside there that might turn you or wipe out your immunity. But after you get to know them, I would definitely personally cash in on their food expertise, their culinary expertise.
I will say though, it is hard to eat when you're grieving, so it could be partly that. It's hard to get down like very rich food. It's just easier to eat something bland.
That's a fair point. Yeah. So what else? We got to end on Robert's scene, but I'm trying to think of what else I want to get to before.
Did you pause for everyone else?
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Well.
Oh, I thought he came back.
Is he back? I mean, okay.
Okay.
The one thing I was.
Where should we go in the meantime?
If we want to hit something real quick before we got the DHL guy, is
what
the
were you
whole
saying?
concept of Carol blaming the Hive for giving her a live grenade.
Right.
It's interesting that she's using like Die Hard logic. Like obviously John McClane's not going to give me a loaded gun. That would be stupid.
Mm-hmm.
But like she didn't think of it. I mean, I think there's a lot of evidence to suggest these people would go through the most straightforward thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to go through. Yeah, they're not that duplicitous. They're very.
It's interesting.
It's like, do you think the hive mind is capable of lying? And lying is telling a deliberate falsehood, because like they're even open about like, we're going to assimilate you. Yeah, so right. It's going to take us a couple weeks or months, but we'll get there. Don't worry about it.
I think we're going to discover more about the rules of engagement, because I don't think that they have any particular reason to lie, but I wonder what might shift or alter as the cracks show if they feel like they're going to be, they're going to be forced into extinction. If that changes any of the ways in which they have to operate just for survival. So I don't really know, but I don't think at baseline they have any sort of need to lie if they feel like they can manage anything else. But I don't know if they're capable yet. And if you are driven,
it's an interesting question.
Yeah, I'm very curious about that. As far as what you were saying before, with her kind of putting accountability on the Hive for you giving me a live grenade, it's an interesting thing in when she kind of talks about that in the scene with me in the hospital. I feel like the Hive's instinct was to reassure her and tell her that actually her quick thinking saved the day. Like, you're not to blame. I wonder if they felt like in Carol's head, she was deflecting the guilt she might have felt about hurting Zojia by, basically projecting blame onto, why would you give me why would you do that? No one would do that, because they felt like she was feeling guilt. And so then the impulse was like, hey, by the way, actually, you really were the hero of this one. So just the way that conversation started makes me feel like their instinct in seeing her and how she was initially interacting with them was, oh, she's feeling bad about what happened to Zojia. Let's reassure her that not only is Zojia okay, but this isn't your fault. And I feel like the reason for doing that is they're seeing behind the defensiveness as she's blaming herself for hurting somebody else in addition to everybody else she hurt. And she's in pain, but she's lashing out, and she knows that that's causing everybody to be hurt. And then she did it again. So let's make sure she knows that actually this could have happened. It was like a misunderstanding, a miscommunication. And honestly, Zojia's going to be okay because of you. So yeah, I think that's an interesting tidbit of how that conversation even starts off, of what might be going on underneath the surface there.
One thing that I've seen a lot of people bring up, and I think it's a legitimate criticism, is that Carol seems so uncurious about what it's like to be in the Hive. Even in this scene, which I think is a very powerful scene, she never asks. She just says what she thinks it must be like. And so I guess like what she, that leads to this really dramatic moment where she remembers Helen and Zosha, kind of connects those dots. But one of the things that, do you think that whenever is there a future where she puts those dots together and then she wants to join the Hive because she could be reunited with those memories.
For me, as far as what you started with, at least in her reluctance to ask for information, I think it's tied to something where her need to be independent is not wanting to be vulnerable to this thing that she feels is completely anti-human and anti-love, and has stripped the only real thing she's known in her life. If she needs them for information or to feel like she can cope with what might happen if she's reassured about what it's like, I think she wants to deny any of that, even to her detriment, because she doesn't want to need them at all. She doesn't want to need them for information or care or food or sustenance. We discover that you can't really be an island. Like, there's going to be a group of people bringing everything if you want to be independent. But I think it's the same impulse to deny their care, to not want to talk to them as though they're real, to not want to rely on them for communication or interaction, because then that would be accepting the reality that this is the truth now. And I don't think she wants that. I think she wants to just get rid of them because they're just a parasite. If you acknowledge them, then they're human and real, like all the other people have done. And she thinks that's a betrayal of the human race.
Yeah, I think she's against what they stand for, and by asking that, it sort of legitimizes them. And in another sense, it's easier to just be against something that you don't understand. It's like, I don't want to know because I don't like you and I don't want to get attached to you, so it's easier to not know.
Totally.
In terms of the other part of your question,
and that's kind of knee-jerk too, right? You know what I mean? Like, that's not something you have to think about yourself, but if you're that kind of person who engages with the world that way, that's very human and natural to just being curious, I think.
Yeah. No, and to go to the other part of your question, I had the thought today of, I don't think she would ultimately end up joining the hive mind, because then I'm not really sure where the show goes. But I think in her thinking of those memories of Helen and how nice it might feel, I did wonder if maybe the show would bring her to a point where she's so at rock bottom, in so much pain, that she would at least consider it. Because I think up till this point, she has a lot of anger, and that anger is covering up, she's using that to fuel her, basically. And she hasn't really had her like breakdown moment where she feels everything. So I just wonder, maybe as a character arc, if she kind of gets to that point where she even considers it for a moment, and then has to, pull herself back up to complete her mission.
Mm-hmm.
Does she see the hive as human? Still human?
No, I think she sees the hive as the blundering murderer of her wife. And that's like the A1 number one thing she sees it through the lens of.
I think
do we see them as human?
Yes.
I think a lot of us are starting to, especially the shippers. I think the thing about it is that part of the question is that, in spite of herself, whenever she spends time talking to Zojia, she keeps pushing the line of starting to interact with her as though she is human. And then every time the line is pushed to the point where Zojia reminds her of Helen specifically, it brings her out of that, and she gets angry that you are what you are, and this is not okay. But before that, they kind of start falling into it, and then she'll make a crack about that she's a mind stealer and that sort of thing. But they fall into this sort of rhythm where she can't help herself to want to interact with someone and feel a connection. So I think she's fighting that and not wanting to be drawn into that, and putting up almost this sort of childish defense mechanism of wanting to punch the thing that you're wanting to connect to, because you don't want it. But I think she, in spite of herself, feels the same things that you might feel around a human, and has to keep reminding herself that this is not a human.
Yeah, that actually does make a lot of sense. Of if you're dead set against, then whenever you accidentally start to break out of your very narrow and rigid view of the situation, then you're likely to get angry and overcompensate, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I think that we can all agree on is that her tendency to get angry and in that final call to curse out Manusos on the airplane, that's probably going to draw those two characters together in some way, considering everyone else in the world's trying to smother them with kindness and happiness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think we're all looking forward to him coming into the mix. A.ron, you were talking about some ice imagery. What do you got going on with that? Anything?
Is this going to work? Let me see if I can try something. I don't know what it means, but for your consideration, ice.
Huh.
Also, ice.
Yeah, I noticed the ones on the truck.
Also, obviously, ice. What?
Huh.
Is this reinforcing the importance of the frozen eggs? Is this talking? Is this? Because here's the other thing. This could also just be a Vince Gilligan The Thing goof, because The Thing's weakness was cold, right? And he's also said that's one of the many inspirations of this is The Thing. I wonder if so. It could just be an Easter egg. It could be an actual, I don't know how you'd exploit the weakness of the hive to cold, if that's even a thing that can be done. But also, yeah, I think it might underlie that there is some hidden significance to the only thing that we've seen frozen, which is either Helen or Carol or both of their eggs. There's a lot of ice, a lot of focusing on ice imagery.
If the hive is no longer human, and this idea of freezing eggs, I mean, how many people freeze eggs? How many are there? How many of them are out there? And is that the future of humanity? What's that?
So I personally have not frozen any, so I'm just bringing the average down.
But I mean, it's a fairly common
thing, especially more so now. Access to that.
I mean, there's there's places out there that are filled with people's embryos and whatnot, right? So
yeah. And do they have to reproduce that way? Because if you think about it, no one's coupling up in a normal way. So how does that work? Do they have to use eggs, or is there something more like organized, which is weird to think about?
My only fear is in doing, if they're knowing that those exist and are on ice, are doing any sort of testing with the embryos to try to discover a way to get around Carol's DNA situation. I hope not damaging them in trying to figure out the solution with Carol to bring them into the hive, because they know that they exist through Helen. I think that would be really heartbreaking.
Obviously, I tried to look it up really quick, and obviously that's a privacy thing that they don't disclose how many people do what. But the market of doing this as a business is like a $3.9 billion dollar business in 2020. So that seems like there's probably a lot of them out there. I don't know if that's the direction they're going in, but
you can make a lot of money from a biological imperative, apparently.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think is there anything, Cris, is there anything that you wanted to touch on before we start to get into wrap it up mode that we haven't already brought up?
I don't think so, because I think we kind of covered my thoughts on Zosha's insistence on bringing up Helen, because I was a little confused at first, because I thought they had to follow these very specific requests from Carol to not do that. And they seem to always be searching for these loopholes. And like, I understand they can use the third-party memories, but I feel like in the first two cases, she had to tell her to eat some food because they're concerned about her health. And, she did have to tell her where the package came from because she asked. But I feel like that third time, it was almost like she was reminiscing on the memory herself. And I think that's what we talked about. It's like, is that real? Like, she almost just felt compelled to step in because she was almost feeling like Helen as if she was there, or is that in a more manipulative sense? Or just because they think it'll make Carol happier? I'm not sure.
Yeah, one of the things I like about the premise is that it's because we're just coded to be suspicious and look for something malicious and to expect that this other force has to be bad and secretly bad. I think that the more I look at it the more I think about the way that it's been constructed, we can kind of take them at their word that they're not, but you still can't help but think like, man, they got to be up to something shady.
Other than taking over an entire, genetically modify an entire planet without.
Yeah, but they're not necessarily responsible for that. You know what I mean? Like that's just a thing that happened as far as like what you're dealing with now. You know what I mean?
I thought about too though today. Oh no, go ahead.
No,
go ahead.
Okay. No, this is completely random. It just popped up because I was talking about or we're talking about responsibility for like starting this thing. And I had seen certain comments before about why, because the hive doesn't mess with animals, it was a rat. And I just wanted to point out that this was humans using the code to test animals. The hive didn't infect the animal. We did, and the animal then bit us. But the hive, as they've come into place, don't want to just infect a bunch of animals. They're just releasing them, but they don't have that impulse to do that. So that's why the rat or the mouse rather had it, is because we were testing. And so I don't think they are trying to infect anything from my understanding. As far as responsibility of how this even started and whatnot. Sorry, tangent. Go for it.
No, absolutely. No, I just had the thought today, if this hive mind is spread from outer space, are they connected to like species from other planets, or is this like concentrated to Earth?
It's another one of those things we don't really know. It's like they never they seem to indicate that they're not the aliens themselves, but they don't seem to know all that much about it whenever Davis Taffler talks about it.
Yeah. I think the best evidence about them not being in contact from 600 light years away is number one,
600 light years
really
away.
Science fiction to think about some kind of psychic, instantaneous across 600 light years energy, when you've already taken the time to painstakingly explain how the light signal came through space and all that.
Yeah.
But the other's like, that they've not ever referenced anything that's non-terrestrial.
Yeah, there's no real influence that you can see.
Yeah. Like, not that it's controlling them, but just that if this is a thing that they're spreading, and like if on Earth they're building a signal to spread it outwards, is it almost like a rival? You know how in a rival, they just kind of give the gift of a new language, but there's really no purpose to it. Is it more just like that, or is it to connect these different planets?
There's
I guess
kinds of dark ways you can take it too. Like, I couldn't help when the nerds were talking about, oh my God, this antenna had to be the size of Texas and it had to put out 1 billion jillion gigawatts and I had to do. I'm like, what if this is like one of those species that dies to reproduce, where it's like the amount of energy that it takes to blast a signal in all directions to reproduce consumes the planet, like in some kind of holocaust, that much energy going through. And it's like those trees that only can reproduce during a forest fire. It's just like the way their life cycle is, and I don't think anything of it.
Yeah, one of the things about that I learned when I was looking into the Very Large Array was that the radio telescopes, their size, like the array itself, you can move the pieces around and make it bigger and make it work differently. So you could make a very large array that was located on different planets, and it would work in the same way. Like you could make the signal and the strength bigger by, it doesn't have to be physically connected. It can work in different points, and it connects it that way. So they might be trying to make a really big telescope that's even bigger than Africa, as they mentioned it. Did you have something to add there, Robert? I don't know if I cut you off there.
No, I don't think so. Sorry, I was reading some of the comments. It's very funny and fascinating, some of the stuff that's coming up. So go for it.
Yeah. MW, thank you for the Swedish money. That I guess by the color, it's about $10 ish. I don't know how to convert that in my mind, but maybe an executive mover isn't needed to explain the hive's actions. might just be the way a hive mind naturally behaves. Essentially, selfishness elevated to encompass everyone. Absolute altruism.
Maybe I'm a selflessness.
That's kind of how I see it. Or like if there was peace on Earth and you had so many people's, as in it basically, if there was no judgment between your different thoughts, then it's almost like the best idea or thought could win out because there's no arguing between different sides. You just have all the evidence, you can evaluate it, and then the best kind of idea comes out,
no feelings, just
it's really funny how, because I've been watching the chat too, and it's like there's some people that just cannot. They just like there's no way that there's going to be an opinion to suppress. I'm like, I don't know, like if everyone in the world could just like have, essentially go out and get a beer and talk it out and like be completely understood, and there's no misunderstanding, and it's all sincere and honest, and that intuitively, like your own thoughts aren't lying to you. I think the world will quickly figure out a lot of shit.
I also think it's interesting how the
kind of doofus, so maybe
I think it's interesting how alien behavior can seem if you're eliminating a lot of the unconscious drivers that people have, suppressed things or things that you haven't worked through emotionally, how much those drive behavior in mass. If that's suddenly stripped away, the things that you want or the things that you're willing to do to get certain things, even if it's like validation or connection or whatever, might completely shift and alter. And so the pattern of behavior might suddenly seem non-human to us that are used to living amongst that. I mean, not everybody is completely emotionally healthy and has worked through all their stuff and, is completely altruistic. So if that's stripped away, genuine altruism would seem quite alien. I don't know if that's what this is, but I'm just saying a lot of what makes us human are those imperfections and those things that we're still working through. So if that's just connected in a way that everybody that's worked on something else kind of like fixes the thing, and they're just like, we're healthy completely and want to extend that to you, that would look very abnormal because no one's perfect as a human.
Yeah, so I wanted to give A.ron and Cris both a chance to ask Robert about the scene, if there was anything that they wanted to ask that I hadn't thought of.
Yeah, I mean, you might have kind of answered it, but I did want to know how many. I know you tried a lot of different things out, but did you ever try it with a more I don't know, did you ever like lean like one direction, like very serious, very humorous? Like, how did you find that middle ground? And were there discussions as to how distressed you should be over the atomic bomb question? Because I think you do a good job of keeping your smile, but there's like some pain behind your eyes. But I could imagine that going to a much more dramatic place, perhaps. So I'm just curious how you found the tone.
Yeah, I don't want to reveal too much of the special sauce as far as like taking people out of the experience of how they piece it all together. I do know when it pops to certain things, what was the more distraught version, what was the more silly detached version, what was like, I can see what kind of was brought together to build that performance, though a lot of what is there is ultimately pretty much the there are slight variations in there, but it is of a piece of what we were pretty much going for. So yeah, there were versions where it was much more sinister and much more playful and innocent and that sort of thing. And I think, as what often happens in these sorts of situations, as you do it enough and everybody feels like we've got what we want, then we're just like, let's just try some stuff. So we did a lot of different things. And to be honest with you, I feel like there's a couple of moments in there where when I saw it, I was like, I legit don't remember doing that. And I really like that. But like, I think just when you're in the flow of it, and then you're just like, I'm just going to be present with this. And I'm lucky even to perform with Ray, where even on these close-up shots where it's just camera in your face, she's right there behind it, giving me everything I need, and vice versa. We were really present with each other. So if we're going to try something and I'm going to throw something at you and then you're going to react in a different way, that's going to completely impact how I react. And not just in I think Carolina spoke about this. The instinct is to react in a human way. And like, because we're not necessarily in certain ways, you have to take that in and process that through the filter of how you would respond and play with that. So you're not just like bouncing it back and forth. You have to kind of process it, and take it in how you would given this context. And that just can be all one of the issues sometimes, especially with doing a show that isn't already out, is when you aren't going in with an established tone and a framework of how they normally do things. When I go in, there's infinite possibilities of how I could approach this. So most of the time in this sort of situation where I don't have a lot of prep, my concern is, hey guys, if I'm going too far, rein me in, please. I don't want to see the show and then it's this tone and then I pop up and I'm just way over here. But when you trust the creatives, they're not going to let that happen. And when they're telling you like, no, go there, you're like, okay, if they like this, they're not going to be like, this doesn't make sense for the show, but I really like that moment, so screw it, they're going to make sure it's of a symmetry with the rest of the piece, and that gives you the confidence to really play with the different variations. So I'm not entirely sure I answered your question, but we did so much variation primarily because I think we felt confident early on that we had the foundation of what we wanted, and then we wanted to see what was surprising. And Gordon was great of just like cracking up behind the camera and then throwing different like ideas at me and playing with it. And then when he would find a nugget of what he wanted, he was like, okay, I really want to keep that. And then let's see what happens around it. So we really just played all around with the scene because I think we felt pretty early on like, oh, this is working. We have something. So what else can we find? And I think, Ray has been really lovely in her communication with me as well. I think that's why the response was the way that it was, even within the creative team, is the capacity to come in and do that and actually play. I think they really appreciate, because I think even when I've worked in music, when you're throwing out ideas and someone throws an idea back at you that's not what you had in mind, but then sparks something else in you. That's a lot of what we love to find when we're acting on set. Because you don't want to get fixated on this idea of how it's supposed to be and miss the magic that can come. So when you're able to really play back and forth with somebody and find new things, that's where you really discover cool stuff. And I think that's what we did.
No, it's a great scene. I feel like everyone loved it. I don't know if you've seen yourself on Twitter, but everyone loved your character.
That's what I was saying before we got on, is I'm actually in the middle of like I'm completely moving everything around in my house. And this is a different room than I would do a zoom in. So I just like have crammed everything in the corner. So it's off camera ish while I'm like, moving everything. But I'm supposed to be doing a ton of different things. And yet I keep getting notifications. And then I'll wake up 4 hours later, having liked everything and all the ships about Carol and Helen and whatnot. So I have to like, remember like, okay, I have a life, but it's just very cool because I love what I do, but I also would be geeking out about this show if I had nothing to do with it. So to then be actually a part of it, and then to have people respond the way that they have so quickly and in a much larger capacity than what I'm used to, because I've worked quite a bit and I'm proud of a lot of work, but it's rarely on a show that's in the zeitgeist quite like this one is right now. The response is really insane, and I'm enjoying it. But I also have to like, live life and not get lost in the Twitter sphere. But it's been really lovely. People have been so kind and so, just really warm about how much they enjoyed it. And that means the world. I'm glad I know so many talented people that do brilliant work, but it's kind of in the void. And so to be on something that people are watching and have them respond is really just a nice feeling for me that, I love what I do, but you don't always get that opportunity to be on a show like this. And so I'm really happy.
Yeah, it's such a great team too. So it's nice to see good people celebrated and to see a show like this do so well right off the jump. So, yeah.
A.ron?
I don't think I have any like questions. I don't think I have questions that Robert can answer. But maybe we can just kind of talk as fans here. I didn't get to quite explore that. We started this towards the beginning conversation about what I thought was interesting about that is where is the threshold, right? We saw that like a nuke was where, because she's like, can I get a grenade? You get a grenade. Can I get a bazooka? You can have a bazooka. Can you get a tank? No problem.
Mm-hmm.
How about a nuke? That's the first time we saw the hive mind go, ooh. And I'm wondering if like, okay, I want 10 nukes distributed to the world's 10 largest cities with a remote detonator connect to all of them. Like at what point you're just like, no, you can't. Or like, I want you to take me to the U.S. Army research facility, and I want their weaponized anthrax, and I want a biplane to spread it with. Like there's got to be something where it's like, okay, a nuke would be bad, but what is that line? What is the line where they have to say no?
Speaking to that, I think it's actually an important, very subtle thing, because I've heard that mentioned quite a bit, that it was kind of honky-dory. I don't know why I chose that. Up until the atom bomb, actually, he was very eager in the yes, or they were very eager in the yes, but there was actually an escalation. When she asked for the tank, there is a mild hesitation. He just goes, mm-hmm. He's not as quiet. So each time she escalates, it's a little bit less, but it's still there. The atom bomb is where they're like,
it goes off.
Maybe I need to like question this a little bit. So
Right.
It's not just like all the way eager until that moment. It's actually, you see the progression, or maybe don't, but it's there of the as this escalates, we're kind of having to calculate the pros and cons. And so I do think there is actually a when we're talking about what we'll have to talk about weighing those things. For me, the line really becomes, how much damage can we tolerate while making her happy, which is the priority, because she's actually the threat to us. And also we have an imperative to make people happy and want her to feel that genuinely, but also she's kind of dangerous if we don't. And so I think really it's just like, yeah, you can get a rocket because we can lose a couple of bodies. A tank, that's a little bit more concerning. Not really that big a deal. Atom bomb, we're talking about like damage, millions of bodies, radiation. We kind of have to factor in how much like manpower we need to like quarantine and move everything around that, so that life and civilization can continue as we need. But technically speaking, Carol just took out just about the same amount of people, and so if this make her happy, I guess so. But we should probably like just let her know, hey, this would be a big deal, and you seem to have been affected by the fact that 11 million people died. So just to be clear, this would be really like a detrimental thing to the world. But I think, again, the reason why, in my opinion, and not the fact of what it is, but in my opinion, the answer is ultimately yes, is we're still going to be fine. We'll lose a lot of bodies, but like it's not going to be a threat to us as an organism if you drop a bomb. And if that's what actually makes you happy, okay, just like with the grenade situation, like, fake grenade, but like if you're asking for a grenade, we think you're being sarcastic. The risk of upsetting you because it's like, no, I said what I wanted. Why would you think I'm going to be like, oh, maybe she actually wants this? We don't know exactly why, but like, I think the threat of upsetting this person keeps creeping into, it's not like they don't understand sarcasm. They're not really sure if that's what she's doing. And the risk of not taking her seriously is a big deal. So it's like, I'm going to bring this. We think you're being sarcastic. Are you? Okay, it seems like you are. I'll take this away. Versus like, oh, I didn't even understand that this was sarcasm. It's like, we think so, but we're not going to risk just assuming that that's actually what that is. And then you're upset with us.
I do wonder like where exactly is that line of like, because like they accepted the death of like 1 billion people to fulfill their biological imperative. So it's like, okay, 1 out of 8 people on a planet will live with that stats. They'd live with like 50 million people dying. They were pretty circumspect about 11 million people dying when Carol did it. Like, where's the point where it's not cutting off a fingernail. Where's the
To
point
empty
where
the
it's like,
zoos, they were all right with lots of people
or-
getting mauled in the process.
Right.
Well, yeah, but it's, again, that's small scale. Like, what is like,
Yeah.
is like 2 billion, 3 billion. Like, as long as there's just one, or there's two people that are linked together, are they happy? Because it seemed like they were pretty damn happy. And it was just two of them.
I think literally whatever they need in order to function with whatever their directive is. I don't know that there's a line as far as how many people could die, because the people are somewhat irrelevant within the structure of the organism. I think the sort of empathy about the deaths is understanding what that means to Carol and the other people. But I don't think it actually is like, it's a huge loss as far as 11 million people, but like, they're not really people, they're us, and we know those people went, but like, we're still here. Like,
We didn't lose them.
We didn't lose them, and so it's only really a big deal in our concern of upsetting Carol that we know she would be upset for killing 11 million people. Maybe let's not mention that, but like, we still go on. So I that's what I'm saying is, I don't think it's a matter of a number of people dying for there to be a line, unless it's a matter of function. Like, we can't do what we need to do if we lose this many people. But I don't think it's a concern of, if we drop too many atom bombs, too many people would die, and that's like really bad. And that's why I'm saying, even though an atom is bad, I think they're like, calculation wise, yeah, that's a lot of bodies, but it makes people happy. Yeah, that's actually, we probably should talk about that, so she doesn't keep just doing that, because that could cause like a lack of efficiency perhaps. But I think the paramount thing is her happiness, because again, it's not just, in my opinion at least, it's not just, we really want you to be happy. It's like, if she's not happy, we could die.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the important distinction too, right? Like, the memories are more important than the bodies, as long as they have enough bodies to function as a society, which, I mean, they don't even need to be worldwide. If they all just kind of got together in one central place, you don't really need that many people to have a little small functioning utopia, right?
Exactly. Helen is dead, but Helen's not gone. She's still here. So like, the death is not the same sort of weight or tangible thing, and that could scale. All the 11 million people Carol killed, that might impact the people if there were like, some of the 12 or 13 attached to them, like the grandfather. Exactly. But the grandfather is still there conceptually in memories and conversations, just not that body. And so it's like, hey, we might not want to like shake things up, because we don't want Lakshmi to be upset because she can't interact with the body of her grandfather. But other than that, like, that whole consciousness is here. So no biggie, but we know it's important to you guys. So I think that's how it is, kind of as a function, trying to tiptoe around the emotions of the people that are still connected to this idea of humans having individually this consciousness and soul that can be lost when they're gone.
Yeah. So, the last question I had on here was, are we closer to understanding the hive? And I think this conversation has answered that, in that, no, not necessarily. We certainly got ideas though, and it's fun. And I think that is something that I'm curious to how long they can keep it that way, where it stays fun, but doesn't get annoying, or doesn't start to lose our interest. I'm hoping, I guess what I'm hoping for with the rest of this, I mean, like, I don't expect it to, even though we switch genres and everything else, I don't expect this to change that much from the recipe they have. And I think it's going to be more episodes like this than episodes like the premiere. Character focused stuff, slow burn, episodes that make the internet really angry and complain that nothing happened, kind of stuff.
I disagree.
I like to speak to that too when you're done. But
what'd you say, A.ron?
I said I disagree only because of the budget of this show. The budget of this show doesn't seem like it's going to be a lot of bottle episodes. Like, they're spending $10-12 million. They're spending Game of Thrones money on this, and unless Vince has just literally taken like, $10 million in a dump truck and backing it into his pool in his hacienda in LA, that's got to be going somewhere, and it's probably got to be big splashy scenes.
Yeah, I'm sure there's more coming, obviously, but
yeah.
Yeah,
I did see one.
Can I mention? Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Okay. No, I was just gonna say I did see one.
$1 million per episode.
I wish. I absolutely wish.
Yeah.
It's all for Robert.
Robert's sitting up there knowing he got 1 million for his one scene, and he knows where actually the money went to. He's just not saying
coming in and really like knocking it out of the park for no, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I saw one reviewer who saw 7 of the 9 episodes, and this isn't any spoilers, but they did liken the show more to The Leftovers in the fact that it's a bit more about here's the premise and here's how it is affecting everyone. And in this case, it's mostly how it's affecting Carol and like 2 other people, if even. But I kind of like that. Like that is what I gravitate towards.
Yeah.
I think that's a more interesting thing to explore because we've seen so many zombie kind of shows and I don't know, things where they almost skirt over the actual psychological impact of these events. So I like that it is diving into what this all does to a person and then using the concept to explore Carol as a character, right? Like, you know, her anger issues, that's now amplified because now every time she gets angry, it's killing 11 million people. So that's the thing she has to confront about herself. The fact she was private, that's gone, you know, this new society. So she has to confront the fact, you know, she's a private person. What does that do now that everyone knows everything about you? She was independent. Now that independence is gone. Like, I think that's just so fascinating as a character study. And you can only do it with a sci-fi concept like this. So I'm enjoying the show and I like what they're doing with it.
Speaking to the idea of like filler episodes or you know, being slower, you know, or not a lot happening. I kind of want to say, obviously, there is a variation from the pace and the amount of things that happen in the premiere. And the premiere was technically the first 2 episodes. That was of One Piece, really. And it was quite big. And I think the response speaks to how hard they went on that one. It was really magnificent, right? And I think traditionally, anytime you have a pilot for most shows, you have a really big premiere to bring people in, and then you kind of reset the second episode to start the journey ramping back up the roller coaster. You don't really maintain the same pace.
Right.
Specifically with the sort of dynamics that play here, this is traditional television storytelling that I think people are no longer quite as rhythmically accustomed to because of binge watching, which is specifically here to keep you hooked up each episode so you watch it straight through and don't turn it off. That heightened dopamine thing is not actually traditional storytelling, structurally speaking. Not to say that it's not good, but it's very different. This is why this is a weekly show. This is why traditionally these were the sorts of shows that created water cooler moments, which meant that when you experience something in a show, you had time to process it, go to work or go to your friends and talk about it and sit with it before the next thing came. So there are moments even dynamically within a season where it is a wave where there are heights, and then you settle and you breathe and you sit with things and you discover what impact it had instead of just go. And people, I think, no longer are accustomed to sitting with it because they're like, those first 2 hit so hard. If I'm watching the next one, where's my same hit? Where's the big thing? Even though we had an explosion with the grenade, this was a much more quiet episode that gave us a lot of information that then can build up and ramp up into things later on. And yet I think people think that means it's lesser because it's not loud and explosive or gave the same hit in the same way. And I would just say that when you have master storytellers that craft things, if you look at any Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, there was a rhythm and there were very slow moments early up that built to a crescendo where that's what people remember, the whole of it, but they don't always remember how it was built. So we're getting ingredients to what is going to be a feast. And sometimes that doesn't look quite as like bombastic as the what came before, but it will all come together in a way that is really satisfying. I believe that because I know what they're capable of as a team. So I say that all to say that when I watch these, and I know it's different because I'm also a creative, I am endlessly fascinated and curious about those little moments that tell me secrets that when they're revealed, it's like, that was where that seed was planted. And I think that is just as fascinating for me as the big set pieces and moments. And I think that's how art is allows us to take it in if we're willing. And then I can also turn on the binge thing and just consume, because that's something I like to do too. But to try to take it in as though it's the same thing, I think can lessen the experience that you could have if you recognize that this is a different form of storytelling.
Yeah. That's something that, A.ron and I have talked about this extensively and on more than one occasion. It's come up in different live streams as well. I mean, you're preaching to the choir, but at the same time, like, it's something that people need to hear, and hopefully they don't listen to me whenever I talk about it. Maybe they'll listen to you, since you got a little more status and the fact that you're a part of that world. But yeah, like, certainly I hope I didn't give the impression that I wasn't a fan of it. Like, I would,
that was completely directed towards you as a rebuttal.
Yeah, but yeah, it's just part of it's frustrating because of my job, and I do want to engage with my viewers, and I do read comments, and things trend in directions that I don't think people like who are really. Because the thing you can do with TV is you can spend a lot of time with characters, like, that you can't do with different mediums, is you can spend a lot of time developing characters. So that's why I like it. You know what I mean? Like, that's the thing that sets it apart. Like, a 2.5 hour or 2 hour feature film is a different kind of thing. It's a different experience. So yeah, whenever, like, this is what I'm signed up for. I hope that people will stay engaged, that they won't start comparing it to other experiences. And I think that like you said, for me, it's never going to be a question, because I do trust the people that are involved. I don't know how far that will spread, but I think that's a pretty good point to end on. We're clocking in at 2 hours and 30 minutes. So
my bad.
it kind of flew by. But I think that if we don't, sometimes with these things, if we don't consciously wrap them up, they could just go on forever. And I want to thank everyone for coming in and doing this with me. I'll let you guys each, sort of plug and remind everybody who, maybe people who showed up late, what you do, where you're at. I guess, yeah, we'll start from the top and go around. Robert, you can, are you working on anything else? I guess you could maybe talk about, or.
No, I'm in talks for something right now, and so I didn't want to jump the gun and be like, yeah, because it's not a done deal. But it's funny, actually, the timing of this show coming out, because I feel like doing something that has this much buzz around it kind of like accelerates the process when you're like talking about something and then you come out and it's like, oh, actually, so it's been very funny, the shift in urgency for certain things and getting me signed up for things, which I'm really grateful for. But anyways, as far as what's coming out, I know that season 5 of For All Mankind is coming out next year. And I think that's about it. I know earlier this year, of what came out this year, I think it was a really good episode of Watson last season that I starred in, that I think is a really nice showcase for my work that is completely different than this character. So I think if you're interested in the range, I think that's a nice one to see, of something recent. But yeah, I think I'm really curious what comes up from this, because I have had a lot of in the last couple of days, I've had a lot of response as far as people interested in me being their projects, and that is really, really cool to have people have seen my work. So yeah. I'm terrible at being evasive, but I'm excited about what's coming. But I'm not currently on something. I'm just about to go film a short with a director friend of mine that is going to be basically a proof of concept for his film that he's making. He's extremely talented, so I have to get back into shape. I've been snacking so hard, guys. It was my birthday a couple of weeks ago, so I've just been eating everything. But I have to be very physically fit for this in a few weeks. So that's kind of what I'm starting up tomorrow. Is training for that, and then continue with these meetings, because a lot of what is coming up so far wouldn't start, I believe, until like February or so. So a lot of the work that I would be doing, I would start filming in a few months. So I'm kind of just gearing up for wherever I'm going to be, because none of them shoot in LA. So I will have to see where I live in a little bit.
Yeah. And if anybody, I mean, I know because I cover the show that For All Mankind is not huge, but there's a lot of great, there's a lot to like about it. I really enjoy the show, and your character in season 3 was like I said, that was my introduction to your work, and you got to work with a lot of people that had been Cris Marshall, but but the whole cast there was already established.
They'd already been there a bit. Yeah. Well, I think
so. You got to come in and be the new person in the mix, and it worked out really well.
It did. Those guys wanted to have a character that was kind of just around for a couple of episodes, just as a part of the group, and then suddenly become the focus in episode. That was something they were going for. But I think by the time we got to that, because it was a few episodes in before my main episode really started, there had been so much camaraderie between our groups, and we were so close. And I think even by the time Joel came in, because we were all filming as our separate crews before we merged and once we landed on Mars, and Joel was so great, and he took me aside, and we were driving around on the golf cart on the lot, and he was kind of telling me about where the show was going and all these things, and really just was really kind to me. But we got very close on the show, and Cris is still a really good friend of mine, and a lot of those guys we still talk. Awesome. And she's awesome and so talented. I forget the name of the show that she does on Hulu now that I'm such a big fan of, where they're, I don't want to spoil it, but she's really brilliant on a show on Hulu. I want to remember the name. It stars, oh my God, why am I blanking on his name? He was on This Is Us for years. Really talented actor. He played Randall. Oh my goodness, this is the ADHD. He's the lead of that show, where he plays a Secret Service agent. And I think that's what I could say before spoiling it. It's such a good show. So watch Cris on that, because she's brilliant and the best. And we got very close on that show, and it was a really cool time to spend, on Mars.
Well, she was in Paradise. Is that the one you're?
That's the show. Thank you.
Yeah.
Paradise is so good. I love watching that show.
That was surprise. I didn't know anything about that until I saw it, and it wasn't 100% my cup of tea, but it was quite good, I thought.
Really well done.
Yeah. So, A.ron.
Paradise. Oh, thank you, chat. Paradise. Thanks.
Remind everyone who you are and where they can find you.
Hi, everybody. I'm A.ron. I'm from the Bald Move Network. We're a little independent podcasting outfit here in the Midwest that talks about TV and film. We do cover For All Mankind. Curiously enough, we got Pluribus. We're doing Fallout season 1 retro coverage now. We'll be going into Fallout 2 when it drops. Stranger Things, of course. Big Star Trek fans. We cover all the new Star Trek stuff too. We're big on the House of the Dragon and Night of the Seven Kingdoms, and it sounds like we're going to get a double dose of both this year. So we have a good old time. Check us out at baldmove.com, or just search for Bald Move. Prestige is what we cover Pluribus on, but we also have Bald Move Pulp for more of the vampire, superhero, spaceship, ray gun, pow 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 stuff. Baldmove.com.
Yeah, subscribe to their channel. They right now they have. I put it in my post. So we did an episode 3. Because Jim, who was here last week, he was out, so I sat in with him, or sat in for him on Bald Move this week. So you can see us talking about episode 3 on their YouTube channel.
And thank you, Pete, for inviting me on tonight. It's always a great time on your channel. It's an unexpected surprise to get Robert here with us.
Yeah, I think you're back in 2 weeks, I think, right?
I'm a glutton for punishment.
Yeah, so we'll see you again. And Cris, can you want to do a little plugging right before we go?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am covering Pluribus on the Popcorn for Dinner podcast. So you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to their YouTube channel. We're doing TV recaps. We just finished up Gen V and Slow Horses coverage. We'll probably be doing industry coverage when season 4 comes out. So just stay tuned for what's upcoming. And honestly, I'll just plug my TikTok. If you want to follow me, it's Cris Cinema, CRIS, because I've been talking about Pluribus a lot on there. So
yeah, you can type that in there into the comments if you want to be able to find you. I don't have the link in front of me, so
I guess I should say social media for me is going to be I am Robert Bailey in most places, and I am an infrequent user of social media, but I try to pop in every once in a while. But
yeah, I look at it, but I don't use it unless I have to. It seems like nowadays.
Exactly.
All right, guys. Yeah, that's gonna do it for us. Again, Robert, thanks so much for being so generous with your time, and hopefully you enjoyed it. I
did.
Definitely will stay in touch, and maybe we'll have you on for something else again in the future. Like it's a trip that you said you saw yourself on the thumbnail, and so that's sort of what started this connection. This is what started it, and I think hopefully it'll continue because I liked having you here and I like talking to you. So we'll hopefully do it again sometime soon.
Absolutely.
Everybody watching, thanks a lot for coming out and supporting. And like I said, please do support my guests here. I listen to their stuff. I enjoy it, and I think you probably would be too. So that's going to be it for us. We'll be back next week and every week throughout the rest of the season. So same time, make sure you join us, and we'll all talk to you soon.